don't care.
Thank you for your patience.
I don't.
Okay, we're on number 4 under new business. We'll consider the approval of the first reading of our dangerous building ordinance.
And I do want to apologize. There was a mix-up with the copier. We had problems with that, and I didn't realize that the dangerous building ordinance was not included in your packets. It was
yeah,
2
it is.
copies of the IMPC.
I've read it.
Okay, so maybe it was just the online packet, but I wanted to make sure that I emailed out the dangerous business this afternoon and then made you copies so that you have it.
So, Mr. Mayor, Council, so this is the proposed dangerous building ordinance. This is based largely on the Michigan housing law, the definitions of dangerous building, and I've tried to pull in some of the City of Brighton provisions that anecdotally I'd heard Council and others were interested in seeing in South Lyon's ordinance. So this is a multi-step process. It starts with an administration side with the building official and other consultants or experts that would be needed to determine whether a building is dangerous. It would then go to a hearing officer for basically what amounts to an evidentiary hearing. That hearing officer would then render an order, set a timeline for compliance, whether it's demolition, make the building safe, so forth. Then, if there is no compliance, it would go to the city council. And there also is, the city council then would have timeframes for holding its own review, that the city council would not be doing a heavy lifting evidentiary type process, be more reviewing what the record at the hearing officer level was, making its order. It can affirm or approve, modify or reverse. And if it affirms or modifies, it then has timeframes for setting. I think it's a minimum. We'll get into that, but the details on the timing. There's another set of time period for compliance. So this is a multi-step. It's a lengthy period of time for compliance. And there also is a right to appeal to circuit court. And with that, we'll get into some of the details. And I'll kind of just run through this, the ordinance by section. There is, in the agenda note, I've tried to set out a summary of each section to give you an idea of what's in it. So section 18401 is the dangerous building. Its definitions. The big one is dangerous building. This is taken basically from the housing law. And I provided a copy of that to you. That is MCL 125.539. I believe it's on page 6 of the document provided. And there's 10 factors there. 18402 is that states clearly that dangerous buildings are prohibited. So if you have a building with any of those 10 factors, one or more of them, it's prohibited. 18403. This is taken from the Brighton ordinance, and I'm going to take another look at this provision as well. I think I would either add some reference to the dangerous building concept in this provision, because it does say that the owner and occupants are responsible for the building and the maintenance. And having reviewed Brighton's ordinance and other communities' dangerous building ordinances, Brighton's appears to be taken in large part from the International Property Maintenance Code, or a former property maintenance code. And while this talks about maintaining the building, it doesn't really tie into the dangerous building definition. And I would want to strengthen that. And given that 402 prohibits a dangerous building, I'm not sure that this is a necessary provision. So it may be an overlap. I'm not sure it's a problem to keep it in, but I'll be taking another look at that. 18404, this is the notice of process. So this goes through what notice has to be issued, who it's issued to, the contents. You have to set a hearing, and the service, the manner of service is in sub D. This has to be, the notice has to be provided 10 days in advance of the hearing before the hearing officer. My experience is generally you're going to want a little longer than that, or you will be willing at the owner's request to extend that to provide them an opportunity to prepare. Otherwise, you get into circumstances where you're fighting and arguing about whether they've had an adequate period of time to defend themselves and prepare and understand what it is you think is dangerous about the building, whether they have an opportunity to come up with plans for remediation, repair, or otherwise demolition. The end of that service section also provides that if you can't get service through the other manners on the owners or interested parties, you have to publish, and that would be a 3-week period, so you've got a different time period if you can't get notice than the other methods. Moving on to section 18405, emergency measures. This is taken from the Brighton ordinance, and again, I'm going to be looking at this as well. This is essentially in the context of the dangerous building ordinance and process. It provides the city with authority to address emergency matters in response to an immediate danger to life and safety. This same type of concept is present in the International Property Maintenance Code, which we will be dealing with next. So this may not be necessary, but I don't think it's a problem to keep it in because it does fit in with the dangerous building concept. But you would then also have the International Property Maintenance Code, presuming that's adopted, to also take emergency action to address a life safety issue in a building. Moving on to section 18406, hearing officer. This is taken from section 140 sub 4. This is the appointment of a hearing officer. There are very little information about the qualifications of a hearing officer. And then the filing of the notice of the hearing is filed with that hearing officer. Section 18407, this goes through what the hearing entails. The statute does not provide a lot of detail about what the hearing actually looks like, but it's an administrative hearing that the hearing officer is going to take evidence from both the city. It starts to look a lot like an adversary process, but it's more administrative. The city and its staff are going to present its reasons for why the building is dangerous and certain action that needs to be taken. The owner would have an opportunity to present and rebut that information. The hearing officer then, after he closes the hearing, would have 5 days to issue a written order. And the statute is not specific as to the amount of time that the action of the hearing officer has to be taken place in. So he could say, the hearing officer could say, you have 30 days, 60 days, 120 days to implement these things based on what the evidence is. If there's nothing, that may be a factor taken into consideration in the hearing officer's written order.
The statute doesn't put any limitation on that?
It doesn't have very specific guidelines as to timing for the hearing office, for compliance with the hearing officer. So that hearing officer has some discretion to set how much time that person believes it's going to take the action they're saying needs to be taken. So if it were demolition, that may be a shorter time, whereas a rehab, you may have to go through a plan review, you may need to pull permits and stay on top of progress, and that's, it's not as short of a time window for completion of that work. The important part here in 18407 is in sub C on page 5. This is the unreasonable repairs provision. This is taken right from section 1859 from the Brighton ordinance. This is the presumption, essentially, that if the cost of repairing a dangerous building exceeds 100% of the true cash value of the structure as reflected on the city's tax roll prior to it becoming a dangerous building, then it's automatically demolished. This was a provision litigated in the Bonner v. Brighton litigation, so we have some assurance that this provision can be upheld and has been upheld and would be enforceable. As a practical matter, the question is whether you're going to want to use this. I think it has to be the right circumstance where you say this building has to come down. The cost of repairing it exceeds the value of the structure altogether. Also, as a practical matter, I don't think that the city, other than time, loses much by offering an opportunity to repair. But again, that may be a circumstantial issue that you have to know who you're dealing with. Maybe if you have experience with them, you take a different tack.
Is the language able to be modified so that we could protect the building from destruction in the event that it surpassed that threshold? I mean, can we modify the language and still have it be valid?
I believe so. I don't
Because
think you, I don't think you.
Artcraft is a perfect example. If the building went beyond the threshold that this would allow it to remain intact, I would be doing everything that I could to protect the building and make some effort to find a solution short of tearing it down, so.
And I think that's going to be one of the judgment calls for, in an example like.
This says it must though, I mean, so that's my concern.
I think that, again, I think that's still a judgment call from the front end of the entire process. Is the city even going to ask that the structure be demolished? If the city is saying, well, we know that for whatever reason, we've decided this building, we don't want it to come down, and it needs
we
to
use
just
a
be
different vehicle
made
to-
safe,
Okay.
we are going to go through the process and say, these are the repairs that need to be made, and I will look again at that issue, whether this is a mandatory process provision or not.
I think Councilman Kivel brings a good point, because I feel the same way, that in protecting the historical integrity of our downtown is extremely important. And I don't want to see buildings go down that really don't have to, if it's so rigid that we end up with boxes and we end up with things that don't actually, building structures don't actually fit anymore. And I think that's what makes the city of South Lyon kind of unique the way it is right now, at least the downtown portion. So if there's a way for us to put that in there without messing with the way that is written, I guess, for better words, how it can be enforced. I would really like to entertain that somehow, because I think we owe that to the community, and we're not doing it for just right now, we're doing it for 10 years from now, where this town may be much bigger than we are right now, and they'll take that ordinance and use it to tear a lot of buildings down. And so I think we gotta look beyond where we are at the moment a little bit. So, just my little input.
And just so we're clear, the state statute does not contain this provision. This is a provision that comes from the city of Brighton.
Right.
And again, the Brighton ordinance style seems to come from the property maintenance code style, which has similar provisions. And I will look at that. We may be able to work in the idea, if you look at the very bottom of page 5, dealing with enforcement hearing following the city's hearing, there is a circumstance at the bottom there that right from the statute provides that if the estimated cost of repair, and this is under a certain circumstance where the building is damaged due to weather and other hazards, if the estimated cost of repair exceeds the state equalized value, it's a rebuttable presumption, where it's not a mandatory if they can justify that the cost of the repairs makes sense and rebuts the presumption that it be demolished. So,
John. Councilman Kramer. Oh, Megan, sorry.
I had a question. I had an opportunity over the weekend to drive through South Lyon Woods, and I just want to make sure that in the definition of a dangerous building, it would also include manufactured homes. Manufactured homes are a unique animal unto themselves. They have a lot of statutory protection with respect to how you remove them, how you evict tenants from them. However, I was in there and I was shocked at the animals that were crawling around some of those manufactured homes. And that clearly was an area of growth. So I just want to make sure that if we're going to be doing this, that we have an opportunity to not only deal with the buildings in the downtown area, but to also deal with blight that is in the city, whether it's in the downtown area or not. And that definitely is the community of Blight.
Fortunately, without this, we've had success with getting stuff removed out of the trailer park, so.
Well, they're still
Well,
there, so, I was there this weekend, so, I just want to make sure that this ordinance is going to provide us with opportunities, when you talk about demolishing, can we actually go in through the ordinance and remove? I think there might be some state statutes.
Yeah, not to cut you off.
Yeah, no, you're right.
I'm gonna need to check. Manufactured homes are a different animal. They're subject to a lot of different regulations and statutory protection. I would not presume that that's the case. There may be other tools to deal with the manufactured home that we can use rather than a dangerous building ordinance, but I will find out that question.
I think
I will
that's,
get an answer to that.
I think that's an important issue to explore, because we do have this uniqueness in our immediate downtown area, where we have this community right in our downtown area that is not being maintained. I mean, there's no problem with the community being there, it's how it's being maintained that is the problem.
Well, and that would be the other point that I would make, is that this is a dangerous building ordinance. It deals with safety of a structure, not with quote-unquote blight. There are maintenance issues, and we're going to be getting into the property maintenance code issue, which may deal more with the appearance issues and the maintenance of a structure as opposed to the safety of a structure. And we could, nonetheless, I will find an answer to the question of whether a manufactured home would fall under the definition or could have this ordinance for dangerous building applied to it.
I mean, our toolbox for dealing with blight, unsafe structures is going to be different because we have a different character to our community. So Brighton is going to have some solutions to what we're doing, but they're not going to have all the solutions. And so I'm just identifying a problem, and if we're going to be working on this, that is a problem. And if anybody disagrees with me, drive through it tomorrow during the day. This is definitely an area that when you drive down Reynolds Sweet Highway, you clearly get a clear view right in the DDA, because remember, the McCaddy Business Center is in the DDA, and then right across the street, you have this severely blighted area. So, my whole mantra is look at the approaches. So as you're coming into South Lyon through an approach, whether it's Pontiac Trail or coming down Reynolds Sweet Highway, you are coming into the DDA with blighted property right there. So if we can solve it while we're working on these, this would be great.
Yeah, and I would also add that I think there's a measure of discretion in how you approach these. Each community is different. You're going to set a tone with your building official, your fire official, and the attorney. We're going to, and we take guidance from a policy standpoint from council on how we want to deal with these things.
Thank you for your time.
Councilman Kramer.
My concern is, I understand that we have a definition of dangerous building, but I'm kind of trying to figure out who actually determines if the building is dangerous at the initial stage. I mean, I know there's definitions of, like, if it violates a fire code. So if it's more of entry into the building to determine if there is a violation. I mean, I know they're on their private properties, but I'm trying to figure out from this how we can actually go about to make a determination if the building, for instance, is in violation of the fire code, or if it's in violation of the health code. A county health official comes in and sees varmint or whatever, I don't know what else to say it, but how do we gain entry into a building to make that determination? Or is it a situation where we have to look at the exterior of the building and base the condition of the exterior to whether or not it qualifies as a dangerous building?
You can get into the interior through an administrative search warrant, which is not hard to do.
Okay, I just want to clarify, because I mean, I think that's important.
And-
You
and
could
that-
have everything, nice and neat and an ordinance and everything, but then enforcing it's another issue.
There is a judgment call in whether to go through an administrative search warrant and whether you have enough information from the exterior or past knowledge of the interior of the building for other reasons to know whether you need to go get that. It does strategically, you have to provide notice to the owner, And that may send a message that you want or you don't want. So there is a judgment call on whether you go obtain a warrant to inspect the interior of the building. And you have to live with whatever you find on the interior as well.
Would that be addressed in this ordinance that we're reviewing right now, or is that in a separate, for the administrative search warrant?
It's not addressed in this. That would be a procedure we could use regardless.
Okay. All right. Just
Was
wanna
that
make
in
sure.
the, when we had the presentation from the Brighton attorneys that were here, seems like a portion of that was in what they showed us at the presentation, and then we were having kind of a little heartache between the group whether we wanted to have that kind of right to go into a building like that and how we were going to do that at the time. But I think Councilman Kramer's correct. I think that's a necessary evil that'll have to take place, just for the reason is that I don't think I think most building owners will not resort to that 10th degree of that portion of the ordinance, but we may have to use it under extreme circumstances. So I definitely would like to see that.
That's something that can be done.
Well, yeah, I mean, Burns explained you can get cause from a judge, so,
Right.
Yep.
or supply cause to a judge.
No, I guess my question was, was that something that specifically had to be stated in the ordinance that
that's-
we're reviewing right now, or is that
No,
something that
it's not addressed in this.
outside?
It's not a procedure that's addressed in this ordinance.
Okay.
I thought you were wondering about who's the one that makes the reference to the hearing officer for this.
Well, no, that's, I just
That's
want to, I
different.
mean, part of
Yeah,
the problem, yeah.
I misunderstood
yeah,
what
that's
your
fine.
lead-in was.
That's fine. Thank you.
But, Tim,
Okay. Picking up at section 18408. So this is the provision that deals with after the hearing officer has made his ruling. Then it would go to the city council. You have to provide at least 30 days between the written order from the hearing officer. So there's an element of timing about how much time the hearing officer gives the owner. And the city council can approve, disapprove, or modify the order. And you have to provide a minimum of 60 days if you approve or modify the order. So there is a time frame set from the council part of this.
Did I hear you right? The hearing officer can limit it to 30 days. If we were to impose ourselves on it, it's 60 days is the minimum?
Right, so the council is minimum 60 days. That comes from the statute. Again, there is no set timeline on the building official order with respect to the timing for the work that is ordered. And I think you need that discretion. And that's why you may
sure.
need to trust your hearing officer.
They're all going to be different circumstances.
409 is the implementation and enforcement. So these are provided for in section 141. This is mainly subsections 5 and 6 from the statute. These are pulled apart. Sub A is the implementation of the city council's order, and you have the authority to implement your order. Subsection B is the reimbursement of costs. C is the notice of the cost to the owner. They have 30 days under subsection D. They have 30 days to pay. Then the outstanding cost becomes a lien. Section E is, in addition to your remedies under this ordinance, you have the ability to obtain a judgment for the costs, and that becomes a lien, and there are certain requirements about how the lien is placed, what its priority is, and that it needs to be recorded. Subsection F, is the enforcement of the judgment, and I was noticing in my review this evening that subsection G may be a duplicate of subsection E, and I'm going to take another look at that. It looks like I may have put the same concept in twice, so I'll take a closer look at that as well. Section 18410 is the right of appeal from either the hearing officer or any decision by the council to go to circuit court. Section 184, that has to be done, the appeal has to be filed within 20 calendar days from the date of the decision or order appealed from. Section 18411 provides for the violation penalties and declares a public nuisance. The public nuisance does provide for an abatement remedy, and one of the questions that I think is always going to come up in proceeding under this is whether you go to circuit court as a plaintiff to obtain injunctive relief, as opposed to, it depends on the circumstances, but you're going to be on more solid footing with a circuit court judge authorizing you to take action than if you are proceeding administratively. But that, again, that's a judgment call, and that is an extra cost that the city would have to bear if you become a plaintiff in an abatement or nuisance action, seeking to get injunctive or declaratory relief that would require the owner to take certain action.
Doesn't that prolong the timeline too?
It depends on the nature, it depends. You can go in on a TRO or a preliminary injunction hearing and potentially get a ruling right away. But that does, if you don't get that, then it's a longer time period. The remainder of this ordinance from here on out is your typical severability, savings clause, repealer, and effective date publication. I can certainly answer any questions if there are any.
Does anybody have any?
Just a quick one. Did you only look at the city of Brighton, or did you look at other ordinances, like our sister communities, Brighton, not Brighton, I'm sorry, Milford, Northville?
I looked at Northville, Novi, Wixom, Green Oak. There were several other that weren't as close.
Excellent, okay.
Trying to find the more updated. Many of these communities have dangerous building ordinances that appear to be outdated or are not as complete recitations of the statute as are currently exist. So I was trying to find the most updated, trying to find how much they stick with the statute. Are there things that we like that would serve South Lyon better by deviating from the statute? If so, what are those? How do we do it? Is it defensible? And it also includes some of the Brighton issues where we know that the Supreme Court has upheld that particular unreasonable repair provision from a due process and constitutional standpoint.
Thank you.
See, my take on this too is, I've been in real estate for a long time, and it's, Abe has too up there, and I looked at the ordinances that Brighton had, and look what we had. I like the presentation we had,
Yes, yeah.
but I feel as though, it's my opinion, is that because it went all the way to the Supreme Court, and because of the way it was handled, and because of the way it turned out, that we need to make sure that we stay pretty close and pretty strict to what was used, because we don't want to leave anything ambiguous or anything that could come back and just slow the whole process down again, which has happened in the past, or stop it, make it start over again. And so, like some of the other communities where I've talked to some of their mayors and city managers, they're struggling with this also, so we're not unique. Brighton kind of went out and did something a little more, but it went all the way to the Supreme Court, and the judgment was in favor of Brighton. And so if we're trying to follow in the same path, I just feel as though that we need to kind of stay on that line a little bit, you know what I mean? I'm almost to say, I like the ordinances the way they're written, I guess, to a certain point. I hate to give open doors for, that's all.
If I can address that point.
That makes sense.
This ordinance is not, it does not utilize a procedure like the City of Brighton's ordinance. City of Brighton is essentially their building official, serves as the decision maker, and issues an order that says, I find your building dangerous, here's what you got to do, and here's your time frame. And the ordinance and the statute provide that that process is through a hearing officer. And essentially, Brighton uses a slightly different administrative process, and then it goes to city council, just as yours would go after a hearing officer. But they don't have that independent, that intervening hearing officer, so your city council does the heavy lifting and the evidentiary finding, which
So
I
this is what
don't
you're saying,
like
is lifting
that.
it away, taking that away, that's,
I don't want
Yeah.
this body conducting a mini trial.
I agree with that.
I think that's too much. I'd rather have a hearing officer who is familiar with an administrative hearing process, can evaluate and understand the witnesses, has some expertise as whether architecture, building official, or somebody that's capable of understanding the issues and rendering a reasonable order that says, I find this building is dangerous for the following reasons, X, Y, and Z. The city would have provided much of that information and support, and here's what you're going to do, and here's the time frame in which you're going to do it. They get a chance to comply. If they fail to comply, the hearing officer, she notifies the council. I issued my order. They failed to comply. What say you, council? And you get to review what's already been done.
Yeah, thanks, Tim. I mean, I like the clarification, and I guess I kind of asked the question to get that a little bit, but.
So, just
So-
to address your point, I've tried to put what I think are clearly the one big provision from Brighton ordinance that was litigated. That's in here. And I think we have a question about whether it's mandatory or permissive from the city standpoint. I think that's the important one. The structure is different. I just want to make sure that's understood.
Thank you.
I think this, and Scott is here tonight from the Planning Commission, and Scott will tell you if he wants to come up and speak, but the Planning Commission, for years, we attempted to get something in place 5-6 years ago when the economy was getting bad and things were going down, is to begin dealing with it. And I think one of the things, the brilliance of Paul Burns and Brad, is that they were on the forefront of being able to go in and address a lot of weight issues and look at their downtown. So I think even though we have some modifications, some changes, I think what's real important for everyone to understand is that an ordinance like this, the collateral damage, if you want to say, is that it will be gone and we will be a better community for it, is that these particular ordinances are critical, absolutely critical to revitalization and redevelopment in your downtown area. And I think that's the vision process that the Brighton attorneys had, is that I think they understood that you needed this leverage to get in and shake some of these landlords up so that they begin fixing their property. And I commend you, for the work that you're putting in, but I also think that there are some provisions in the Brighton ordinance that we should consider adopting, because this will be, and I think council needs to understand it, this is going to be a highly litigated ordinance. I mean, not all ordinances are litigated. This is going to be highly litigated. So why veer away from what Brighton has done and stick with the model that survived the litigation test? So, but that's just my 2 cents. Thank you.
John,
Councilman Craig.
I think the Brighton test in the Supreme Court focused on 1 or 2 provisions of that ordinance. It did not focus on the entire ordinance. And I think what Tim has included in this proposal are the sections of the Brighton ordinance that actually survived the Supreme Court. So, I mean, it's not a situation where the Supreme Court went, A through Z on every provision or paragraph in that ordinance and made a ruling. I think the important ones are included in our proposed, dangerous building ordinance. And in addition, I have to admit, I like the idea of having the hearing officer do the heavy lifting. I do not want to sit up here and conduct a trial.
No, I don't either.
And I think if that's already done beforehand, and then we can review what has been discovered, I guess, or what the hearing officer has, laid out in front of us, I think we'd have a much better understanding of what has taken place, what hasn't taken place, versus all of us sitting up here as judge and jury trying to come up with who did what and what hasn't been done. So I'm fine with this. I really am. For a first reading, I think it pretty much states everything. And I think if we look at a second reading and addresses some of the concerns or issues that the rest of the council has on some of these provisions, must, shall, versus may, some of the wording, I think we're on the right direction.
That hearing officer is actually a benefit to both parties, because it'll be people that have an understanding of the structural elements of homes and what presents real dangers, rather than having, us, very smart people that don't know a thing about, how to build a toolbox, so. So I think that's
Very much
absolutely
takes
the right
the
way to go.
personal out of it too, I think, where Councilman Kibble is saying the professionals, we may have experience doing certain things, but I can't build a box. So, I think having someone that's an expert in plumbing, expert in building, expert in structural, expert in electrical, way far exceeds anybody on this board here that would want to sit there and try to say that we know that it isn't good or it is good, and make that decision, because I can't see how it wouldn't be taken personal then on their end if we're giving that kind of an answer to what the situation
It helps
is.
isolate the political
Yeah.
components that might end
Absolutely.
up being involved also, so.
Well, I'll make the motion, then we consider approval of the first reading of the dangerous building ordinance.
Second.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Against? No? Great.
Thanks, Jim.
Excellent. Thanks, Tim.
You're welcome.
Okay, consider approval of the first reading of the ordinance to adopt the 2012 International Property Maintenance Code.
Or Boca.
Mr. Mayor and Council, I will start with this. We do have the city's building official and our code enforcement officer with us. This is another of the tools. The city currently has a 1996 BOCA code. It is time to update. I've provided a chapter summary directly out of the International Property Maintenance Code. I don't intend to really go through this in any great detail. In the ordinance, the proposed ordinance itself, there were a couple of things. The fees in so this is on page 2 of the proposed ordinance. Section 103.5 deals with fees. That would be according to our schedule. We're going to want to evaluate and review whether we have the appropriate fees in our schedule. The section 111.2, I've included a provision looking at other cities that have adopted this. I don't think that we want to create and have to populate a separate property maintenance appeal board, which is provided for in the property maintenance code. So other communities have used the Construction Board of Appeals to serve in that capacity, and that's what we've done here. We do have a Construction Board of Appeals, which is required under state law. That body should be capable of handling any appeal from the property maintenance code. And then the other thing is 112.4 is the failure to comply and the extent of the fee or the penalty and fine. And that's really what I wanted to highlight for council on this issue. And Dennis Smith from Safe Built is your building official.
Good evening. Basically, in a nutshell, the property maintenance code ties together all the construction codes that are in relationship to existing buildings. So it ties the fire code, the building code, electrical code, plumbing, mechanical codes all together into a basic standard of maintenance. This is the reason why it's called an international code. This is recognized nationally. It's published by ICC. Most communities adopt it along with their construction codes to set minimum standards for living conditions on the existing building. The new building code just takes you up when it's new. Right after that, it becomes a maintenance issue, a fire code issue. These ties them together. So that's why you see things like weeds. It takes away the weed ordinance from the city, having to adopt a separate weed ordinance. Takes away from having to adopt a separate smoke alarm ordinance. Takes away from having to adopt a bunch of different ordinances that traditionally communities have done and have combined it into one property maintenance code. So it sets a minimum standard for heating in winter conditions. It sets a minimum standard for screens, insect screens, rodent infestation, littering, things of that nature. So there is exterior and interior that the property maintenance code will deal with, and it has for years. the reason why you don't have 96, because it's 1996 BOCA, because it's not in print anymore. It's now called the International Property Maintenance Code, and they change it about every 3 years.
Is there a component for snow removal?
There is a component for snow removal indirectly, in that you will find text in the code itself, which is actually this document, this is what it looks like, that will talk about the clearance, keeping your means of egress, sidewalks, those kinds of things clean, safe, and usable.
Okay, is that the threshold of how it's explained? Because, I mean, ours is such a convoluted,
Right.
ridiculous.
Well, remember, though,
ordinance.
that this will deal with mostly the private right-of-way. It won't necessarily deal with the public sidewalk per se. It will typically deal with the private stairs and things of that nature.
Okay.
Okay.
If we adopt the International Property Maintenance Code, are there any existing ordinances that the city has that this will pretty much delete or make meaningless?
Well, I honestly haven't done that specific research, but I would say that there is a severability clause, so if there's a conflict, typically what happens is the most stringent standard prevails. So if, let's say we had a weed ordinance that was 6 inches instead of 8, technically that would prevail, but I think by adoption, that's an attorney question, it may take that ordinance, out of play, which would
Okay, I
make
just don't want to have
sense.
conflicting,
Yeah, so you don't have that.
Right.
Well, I'd like the ability to modify if we saw it in our best interest.
Oh, yeah, no, I agree. I just want to make sure there isn't two.
Right.
If we adopt this International Property Code, I believe the Property Maintenance Code, I don't want to have it conflicting with any existing ordinances and having a gray area.
Well, I mean, when he spoke to weeds, I mean, we have our noxious weeds ordinances, and I would like to find out which one seems better suited to us, so.
Mr. Mayor, if I could just address that point. So the repealer on page 4, all other ordinances or parts of ordinances in conflict herewith are hereby repealed only to the extent necessary to give this ordinance full force and effect.
Okay, I know that's standard language. I just want to make sure. Okay.
Right, but now, does that put us in a position where we have to determine which one we want to maintain?
No,
Say it makes
this
this
ordinance would prevail.
Right.
This code would prevail.
Okay,
So for example, that what's become apparent is many of the South Lyon City Code of Ordinances are from a particular time period. Probably the 70s is what I've anecdotally gathered from people who have seen our ordinances. If there's, for example, there's one about regulating discarded refrigerators. If the property maintenance code were to address discarded refrigerators, that code you're adopting now would prevail over your existing ordinance because of a conflict, if there is a conflict. If there is no conflict, they both exist.
right. Can we take special action to impose ourselves into the code to modify it, though? Like I say, if we have this refrigeration language.
You can.
And we liked ours more than theirs, can we make that supersede what's in this?
You are able to modify this International Property Maintenance Code as you see fit. It provides, as Mr. Smits has pointed out, they provide a general ordinance form where they say you should fill in the gaps or the blanks on these provisions, because otherwise you're going to have a gap. And I've seen communities adopt it without filling in those blanks. But nonetheless, we've filled in the blanks. If there are specific provisions that we wanted to modify in the future, I'm not aware of anything that we are looking to modify specifically. If we wanted to modify something specifically, we would then come back with another ordinance amendment, just like you would a zoning ordinance. Make that amendment, make the change.
We had a subsection in there or something, sub point to the
Correct.
International Property
Yep.
Code. Yeah.
We are not going to enforce section 118.466, whatever. You could say, you could do that, or we modify the 8 inches to 10 inches. Whatever the example is you want to use. You're able to do that if you feel a need, there's a
Well, one of
need
the
for it.
things that had prolonged this discussion and implementation of this stuff had been the unintended consequences adopting language that you might find out, oh my gosh, it's got something in there that you just think is ridiculous, and then you have to jump through hoops to try to modify that. And sometimes it's caused people pain in the meantime, because that's part of the ordinance and, you know, someone acts on it, so the ball's rolling already, you know, so.
There is an enforcement aspect to this, as Mr. Smith will tell you.
Yeah, the only thing I would say to that, Councilman, is that, you know, again, this is a well-recognized document.
Oh, no, I
across-
get that.
And in my experience, working with this document, there's nothing in there that's gonna hurt us, the cities, or the city, for that matter. It's pretty regular stuff, it's pretty standard stuff, you know, you gotta have smoke detectors, you gotta, you know, make sure your drainage doesn't drain on your neighbor's property. It's that kind of things that are in this ordinance that, just kind of maintains that minimum level of habitability, if you will. So there's nothing really, you know, squirrely in there, or mandating inspections and all this kind of crazy stuff
Right.
that you hear about some ordinances being passed.
Well, clearly the benefits.
It's one of those things
outweigh-
where you stay there and go, trust me, I mean, you gotta trust it. It's a pretty well-recognized and commonplace document, so.
Councilman Kutzel.
The advantage of the International Property Code, and I don't know if you agree with me or not, but there is case law out there litigating this particular code. So what you have, you know, homeowners or whatever, and the advantage that you have adopting this code wholesale without making alterations to it is that you have this body of case law throughout the country that is beginning to develop. As he said, it is a very, very well-recognized code with respect to standards, is that if you ever did get into litigation issues with it, you probably could find a case law litigating that particular section, maybe in a different part of the country, but it is so standard that you could actually rely on that case law as support in supporting your enforcement. So I would be careful about modifying this code just because of the body of case law that's developing with respect to this. So that's just my 2 thoughts on it, my 2 cents. Additionally, the International Property Code has tons of gentlemen, like the gentleman here, who have experience in working with the code. So if you need to bring in somebody, you know, all you have to do is say, do you have experience working under the International Property Maintenance Code, and you could probably find 5, 6 qualified guys in 10 minutes that have the experience working with it. That's the additional advantage with adopting a very standard kind of property code that the city just hasn't done. And I have a question for you. How many cities do you know that have not adopted this code?
That have not done it?
Yes.
I don't know of any that have not done it.
Well, okay,
They may have an older version, but they have not done it.
Okay.
Not done it.
okay, thank you.
Mr. Mayor, in addition, the International Code Council, the ICC, which drafts this document, does do interpretations of various provisions that become contentious. When you have circumstances in the field, they will render an interpretation and say, we're clarifying this, or this is how we read this, which is helpful from a standardized form, code. So that's also helpful as well. If you get into trouble, you can also ask the ICC to help you out.
Yeah, but in order to do that, my understanding is that you can't have too many modifications
Correct.
off of the section.
Absolutely.
So in order to keep your resources available for interpretation, enforcement, and guidance, I would just caution that we may not want to make too many modifications, if any, to the code itself. So that's just my thoughts. Thanks.
All right, well, I'll make the motion then that we approve the first reading of the ordinance to adopt the 2012 International Property Maintenance Code.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? No? Great. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks, Tim, again.
You're welcome.
Consider Dorothy Street sanitary sewer relocation proposal for professional engineering services.
Okay, I will start this out, and then I will turn it over to Bob and Mike Darga from HRC. The city and I have met with representatives of HRC to obtain a cost estimate and proposal for the engineering services and relocation of the sanitary sewer line located on Dorothy Street between McMunn and Hagedorn. This is a line that has had multiple sanitary sewer backups into at least 2 of the residential properties on that street over the past 5 years, oftentimes more than once a year. The line is supposed to be gravity fed to the sewer main on Hagedorn, but the pipe has an acceptable degree of drop, which permits the line to become blocked easily. Currently, the line is jetted at least once a month and monitored weekly by the DPW for problems, but without changing the degree of grade, the backups, which are considered the city's responsibility, as we know that it's an existing problem, will not work, and we need to do something to prevent anything from causing the free flow of sewage to the main and backing up into these homes.
Bob?
Tough. It's tough dealing with homeowners that get sewage in their basement. We're aware of that, and it's really tough when it happens
Multiple times.
multiple times. We've worked closely with HRC. We feel this line is somewhere about 60 to 65 years old. It's in the ground over there. And why has it changed over the last 5 years? I can't tell you why it has. Going back to the supervisor prior to me with the DPW, there was problems then also. But I think it's time to address this and make this go away. This line drains from each home out to the main, and then it travels east from Dorothy Street down to McMunn Street. The problem with the line there is McMunn Street line is 8 feet deep, Mike? 8 feet in the ground. So the fall you have from the back end of Dorothy Street to McMunn is very, very slight. And the leads that go into the main coming down Dorothy Street are pushed into the bottom of the pipe. They don't sit on top of the pipe to fall into it. How do we fix this? Well, we went and looked at Hagedorn Street, South Hagedorn, and lo and behold, there's a sewer there that has been run from Cambridge heading north, which is almost 16 feet deep. This gives us the fall we would like, and it could give us, I don't want to say a simple fix, because when you speak of this kind of money, it's not a simple fix, but it fixes the problem, because now we can get a proper drop to drop that line so everybody's home on that block can drain, okay? The reason why this is a difficult job, though, is compared to, let's say, a water main, but even a water main's similar. When you dig up the street, you're exposing the open ditch cut to the pipe, but then you have to untie every lead from every home, then retie it in, recover the street, landscape, asphalt. There's quite a bit of work done there. And engineers need to be on this job to set the proper fall or drop to that line.
What's the condition of the road at that area?
On
On
Dorothy
yeah.
Street,
Yeah,
it's not in very good shape.
yeah, that's what I was hoping for.
No, it's not in good shape.
What's its pacer? No.
It's like many of our roads in town, you know.
That was my recollection, but I
And
wanted to
just to
make sure.
show you how nervous we are about this, guys, we check it every single day, Monday to Friday. I don't bring somebody in on Saturday, Sunday, but over Christmas, when we have Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, the 4-day holiday for the guys, I brought somebody in. Does that still make it not happen? No, but it might give us just in time to catch it again, you know? We jet this line the first Wednesday of each month with a letter sent to the residents knowing that we're doing it that day, because the leads are so flat coming into the pipe. When we jet under high water pressure,
And this goes,
water shoots up the lines into people's basements. If you have a better suggestion, I'll listen, but I don't think we do.
And this is a long-term solution? I mean, it's
Oh,
not a
gosh,
short-term
yeah.
It's a solution for Mike forever.
It's
We're not
really
quite-
unfortunate. This services 16 homes for $1/3 million, but we can't let it go on like this. We have a responsibility to those folks, so.
We do.
Yeah.
And I feel your pain on that. I get that. I
You
know.
have the money?
We have the money in the capital improvement fund for the wastewater, yes.
Now, just because it says that, this hasn't gone out for bids yet, this job, so it could be less. Yeah.
That was my next question. How quickly can this be done?
Well, once again, what Lynn spoke of earlier, it'd probably be 3 months to
3
put
months
this
to
bid
bids.
together. I'm just hoping I could do it over the coming summer.
Okay.
I know I've heard about this for a while, and
Yeah.
the water tour that I had with you also, we talked about it then. And heard about it a long time ago, from some people that lived over there. So I'm not sure how long this has gone on, but we're fully aware of it, you know, I mean, so, I'm with Councilman Kibble, I don't see how we can
Yeah,
continuously let this problem.
A year and a
Go
half
unfixed.
ago, we dug up the lead to the one home that is backed up numerous times, ran a brand new, we intercepted their line at the property line, city's line, and we reattached PVC line, we ran it under the driveway. That was a good day, I thought it was over, and that lasted slightly less than a year before the next backup occurred. So.
So as far as, do you need something from, do we have to, I mean, the motion that we need to make, is it to give you, or is it just consensus to go ahead and?
Correct.
What we need is an authorization to move forward with the proposal for professional engineering services from HRC for this, and then have them develop a bid package for the project.
Or do we have to give a dollar amount in the motion? Because, I mean, if it comes in lower, I don't wanna be in a position where we said, hey.
No, because we're not setting the construction, we're just authorizing HRC to do the design services, which are estimated at $65,940, or $69,490.
And the bid packages, right? The bid packages as well? Yeah.
Yeah.
69. All right, so
Let me just ask you,
65,490.
this is some armchair engineering. Okay,
This sounds reasonable.
well, check valves, all that kind of stuff, I mean, they're not any kind of a
Here's the
protection.
problem. If they fail, it's our responsibility. Right? The moment we
I know,
put
but you
something
could
in
end
the-
up buying an awful lot of,
Check
you
valves?
know, winter coats that are stored in the basement and that for $1/3 million, I guess. It's not, I'm not suggesting that it's, that we should look for some cheapskate route out, but I'd like us to at least have thought that there's not another reasonable solution that doesn't cost $1/3 million, that's all.
I will tell you the house that has the most significant and frequent backups, it is not just a storage basement. They actually have living space, bedrooms, and people actively living in the basement. And they have lost substantial amounts of personal property through the multiple backups.
When you lose mementos and stuff, that's really terrible.
It's
So,
a bi-level
I mean, it is
home,
just,
you know, and
we're just gonna have to bite the bullets.
Because when you don't have enough fall,
we don't.
there's not much you can.
But
you know,
I
you're-
don't
you're-
know, unless it wasn't documented 20 years ago or 15 years ago. But I document backups. I know how often these occur. One's too many. Two's way too many. So we deal with it, we address it. Thank God we have a Vector truck, because the thing is an incredibly hard-working piece of equipment that we utilize almost on a daily basis in the city.
All right, I'll make the motion then that we approve the acceptance of the proposal for the engineering services related to the Dorothy Street sanitary sewer relocation proposal, and authorize the city to solicit bids for the relocation of the line.
I'll second that.
Discussion?
Discussion?
I had a quick question. I just want to, the issue here is not necessarily the size of the utility in the ground, it's the actual slope. Or are we looking at both
The quality of the pipe in the ground is not broken, Maggie.
Okay,
It's the flatness of the lack of slope in the ground.
okay, so,
Why has that changed? I can't tell you. Maybe it's always been that way, and I've only looked at it for 5 years as being superintendent, okay? But for 5 years, it's been an issue.
does your concept of fixing it upgrade the utility in the ground? Okay,
Brand-new PVC line.
Okay.
That life expectancy of that PVC is 1,000 years, you know what I mean? It'll never deteriorate as compared to 60-year-old crock clay pipe that's in the ground now.
and is the diameter of that
Same amount, 8
the
inch.
diameter's gonna be the same?
Yes.
Interesting, okay. Then, just to sort of tangent off of that, then let's go to Brown's root beer.
Okay.
That is not an issue dealing with the slope, that's dealing with the diameter of the utility in the ground?
No, it's all,
So,
That's
all
a
of
slope
the
issue
above.
too,
look how low Ed sits in the ground.
Yeah, yeah.
He's our New Orleans.
Yeah.
I tell him that all the time.
yeah.
He's 2 feet, if you stand on the corner and look at his parking lot, it's 2 feet below the street.
at least,
His line is like that too.
Yeah,
But the
We have a-
capacity issues are there too.
Okay, we have a motion?
Yep.
Support?
thank you.
You got it, both.
Comment also. Yeah, so my comment is for, I would say Lynn, or it could be Bob or anybody, but it's actually a request, and my request is that, could you please send out letters to the homeowners notifying them of the motion that was passed tonight? Yeah, and then kind of give them rough timeline of what the plan is, and if necessary, maybe even knock on their doors. I think they would appreciate that, so.
When
Certainly.
my phone, I come to work at 8:30. When my phone rings at 7:30, I'm freaking out. Because, especially if I see it's the DPW call, because I don't want this to happen again.
Right. Yeah, just please, yeah, some sort of communication would be great. Thank you.
okay, we have a motion, we have support, all in favor?
Aye.
Yes, no? Perfect. Thanks, Bob.
Thank you, Mike.
It's just Mike.
No, that Mike.
Oh,
Mike Darden.
Hugs all around.
oh. I thought since you made the motion.
Consider approval of repair for sanitary sewer for along Pontiac Trail near the Water's Edge complex.
We just spent all your money, Bob.
Fix the sewer line to offset existing sinkhole conditions.
You know, I like coming to meetings that I don't have to speak. Although, yeah, it's me.
Our bank account likes that too.
This is a problem. A sinkhole is formed just to the southern entrance upon Water's Edge Apartments, okay? We've looked at this. We don't know why this is occurring, okay? If you remember last year at this time, we rebuilt the manhole that sits about 20 feet to the east of this sinkhole. We don't think it has anything to do with that issue. But what we did to that manhole was huge. I mean, we saved it, and it's good going forward for another 30 years, okay? But this line that feeds that manhole, there's 2 lines that feed it actually, but this one comes in 14 feet down at the very base, and a sinkhole is formed 25 to 30 feet west of it. We have filled it twice, keeps coming back. It's concerning to us. There's a manhole 130 feet to the west of that we pop and look down in, and when you look in this manhole, there's very slow flow coming in. But then when you go back to the manhole that rebuilt where it drains into, it's gushing in. It's picking up water out of the ground, so that tells us there's a hole or a big break somewhere in that line. The problem with this is we can't tell, because when we tried to videotape this a week ago, the company that we brought in to do it could only get a camera 30 feet up the line and it's hitting something. That tells us possibly that pipes have separated, back here, and maybe there's a hole up here. The only way we can deal with this, guys, is I need to bypass pump, meaning drain that line, run it above ground, drop it into that manhole. Now that dries the line up, then it can be dug. The problem there is it's 14 to 16 feet deep. I don't have equipment that can dig that deep. Our deepest main in the city's 8 feet, 9 feet.
Are there any concerns about the destabilized soil? Where that-
Yes, and we can't tell that either till we
I mean,
get in there
with a
either.
rig on top of it.
And let me
That's-
tell you, here's the other problem. The water table in that area, 5 feet. I gotta dig 14 feet. The size of the hole for a 14-foot deep hole is 30 feet wide minimum. This is a big problem. Here's the other problem. It drains the north edge of the city. Colonial Acres, Pond, I call it Pond Trail, Water's Edge Apartments, and a few other neighborhoods north. It never stops flowing, 24/7. I didn't get 3 bids yet, but I need to go ahead to at least get going on this. I'm not trying to put you guys in a bind here, but this is a serious issue. If this fails, I have no way to drain the north end of the city. This is something nice to wake up at 2 o'clock thinking about. It happens. Yes, I'm sorry, I didn't think you.
How close is the, this water hole,
The pond,
the pond, to the pond?
50 yards, 60 yards.
Is there a possibility that you just have tremendous leaching going on in that soil?
It's possible, but it's getting in the pipe somehow, Maggie, and I don't know how it's getting in that pipe.
Because I've seen that pond completely overflowing onto the street.
I know.
And so I'm sitting here saying to myself that it's possible that you've got so much leaching getting out of the pond, that it's leaching. I mean, 50 yards is nothing for that pond to leach.
Absolutely, but
So-
the fact is, when they put the camera lens down to videotape it, the entire depth of the pipe, which is 12 inch, is filled from top to bottom, all the way up, okay? So something is not letting that water release, or so much is coming in upstream from it, it can't take the flow that's back here away from it. We need this to be sealed tight. And obviously a sinkhole leads to a problem that something is leaking from the top down, because that dirt is going somewhere.
Well, what you have is erosion going on.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but that dirt's gotta go somewhere.
And the dirt has to go someplace, so the question is what's causing the erosion?
And it's probably going into that pipe,
That's-
which is being
Yeah.
washed away, and guess what? It's settling out somewhere in our system.
Where does the pond drain, or does the pond have no drain?
It has no drain.
Okay, so it's leaching. Okay.
But we won't know till we dig down to find
It
it.
may be a combination of the two. I mean, you got where the camera's going down in there and running right smack into something.
Yes.
And it's not getting anywhere. So you've already done that due diligence in a sense. You've already checked that. And you've gone and opened up, popped the manhole up on the other side. You already know the water's flowing big in the one area, and you go down to where you pop the manhole up and it's not coming out at all. So it's obviously being stopped. The erosion might be a problem. It sounds like to me the pipe's broke.
I do.
I'm not an expert at all, but we've already cambered it.
What we were
So-
hoping to do was cut it at each end and stick a new piece in the middle.
You comfortable that if you repair that pipe there, I mean, is that the only location where that pipe can go? It can't go on the other side of the road?
The only place you can go.
Okay, all
'Cause
right.
there's 2 manholes it goes between.
Yeah, no, I just want to make sure that, I mean, if we repair it and everything gets stabilized, the soil underneath, I mean, that's the only place it can go, but hopefully if it's repaired, we're not going to see something like this, hopefully next week or something like that.
This is a statement of your infrastructure. It's easy to look at above-ground wires, Edison telephone pole, water there, pipe stuck in the ground for 40, 50 years underground.
You think that's how old that stuff is?
Well, it was put in when Colonial Acres was first built, and I think Colonial was first starting to be built around 68. So 30, 45, 46 years minimum.
I was just looking at, the differential between your original ballpark thumbnail of 65 and the 127 that you're
And I'd like
kinda
to s-
rounding into now. I was wondering if you identify the failing early, like if you start where that 30 feet that you're suggesting the shift had taken place, and it reveals that that's the solution right there, would you intend to still go the entire length of that pipe?
We think there's two spots. Definitely, I'd want to dig at the,
Well, you'd be able to TV from that opening
correct,
too.
correct. But let me say this, and that 60,000, that was a ballpark number guy threw at me, the
yeah,
guy,
right.
the video guy that day. But what it didn't include was bypass pumping, which is $10,000 a week to bring a company in to do that. I think we all joined the wrong business, huh? All right, so that, and possibly dewatering the ground is out there. If that water table's at 4 feet and we can't dig down 14 feet, we're gonna have to suck water for a while out of that ground to dry that up a little bit before that final dig is made. Is that true, Mike?
Are you
That
asking,
makes sense.
are you asking us to waive the bidding process, or is this something that can be submitted for bid?
No, I'm willing to do that, but I
You're
would like to get
concerned,
that
right.
bypass pumping set up, but I wanna try to do it as quick as I can, piggyback a construction company, because the moment they start bypassing, we could start digging possibly, and this could be a week to 10 days and it's gone and over. Okay?
Yeah, well, plus, once the pump starts, it's 10K a week.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, we wanna-
prolong it.
Joe?
Yeah, so I'm looking at these figures, we don't know how much is gonna be 60,000
No, we
or
don't.
nothing, or more. And then I kind of heard what Maggie said about possibly leaching, and it, just something doesn't add up in my brain. Where I'm going with this is, it makes me think, okay, that water's edge, if it is leaking, that there is some sort of, you're gonna have to talk to them either way, we're gonna have to work closely with them.
Absolutely.
So if it is coming from them, it only sounds, and let's say fair is maybe not the right word to say, but it sounds as if there should be some sort of a shared costs associated, especially if it's coming from their pond. I mean, legally, I don't know how that works, if that would, their insurance would cover anything, but if we're gonna be digging up all their property, or not all their, but adjacent to their property, or even encroaching on their property, I almost feel like we're taking for a ride if we gotta fit the whole bill, if their pond's, making the issue here.
Well, let me, if I may.
If it may be, if that's the case,
Yeah,
in fact.
it's a city, the city main right there is ours, okay? It's ours, the sewer line. That ground is saturated, wet, obviously. But I don't know if that ever changes from the pond. It's probably wet all the time down there, and we were shocked to see last week, we did a small dig there, and we're nervous about digging any deeper with the situation the pipe is in, but we hit pipe at water at about 5 feet, which is pretty shallow.
So I guess the question I have, then I'll ask it more directly, and maybe it's for Tim, is if it is found out that we get in there, we dig it up, and adjacent property owner is causing the damage, do we have any legal ramification to try and get recovery? If it is not, in fact, not our property that's causing this issue?
Well, I think Bob is, it's a city sanitary sewer. There should be an easement for the city to access and maintain that pipe. If it's a defect in our sanitary sewer, you're not going to be able to point the finger at somebody else. If there's something that a private owner has done to the pipe or caused the pipe to do something, that may be a different circumstance, but we wouldn't know that at this point.
Okay, I guess my point is just, let's not lose sight over, really.
Yeah, I wish I could be more definitive, Joe, what the problem is, but we just don't know right now until we get down there and de-water and then take a dig to see what's going on.
Okay.
Could
wish
be,
I was
it
more,
could very well be a
helpful to you
combination
guys.
of the two, of the broken pipe and erosion going on at the same time, just
Well, I'm
complicated the
confident that
entire issue.
if there were some way to identify that they were a cause, that we could pursue that.
Yeah.
Me too.
But in
Yeah.
the meantime, we still got to
Absolutely.
fix.
I was throwing it out there, I know.
No, I agree.
I
You
would
know,
bring
I
it
think
back
it's
to you guys and
unlikely
say, hey, this is what's going on.
we'll be able to make the connection.
So what do you want us to do as far as right now? I mean, do you want us to approve, I mean, there's a quote in here for $60,000, but we don't know if that's gonna be anywhere
Probably
near.
it's not gonna be enough.
Okay, so you want us to approve,
Do you have the letter, the follow-up letter?
Yeah, they're give them about 127.
yeah, it was 100, went up to 100, that's right, I read that letter.
I mean, could we say something not to exceed or something? Let me try to get somebody in here relatively.
68.
You know, we have a company in town that's looking at this job. They wanna do it. Roads.
If I could make a comment, Mr. Mayor. I've said this for, I'd say it was like the last 4 years, but I know that we have to go by the bidding but I always feel like when we set the not to exceed, it's almost, in my opinion, in our best interest to set it lower, because it gives the bidders more incentive to not overbid. I mean, so I would say to not to exceed 60,000, in my personal opinion. I don't like leaving that cushion, and if we need to, we can always come back and adjust it. But giving up front, I think we set a bad precedent for always putting it too high to begin.
Well, but I'm sorry, Joe, but I
Yeah.
think the concern is we need to bypass that pipe now. So regardless of if we send it out for proposals or not, the issue's gonna be, we have to bring in that company to do the bypass, right? Which is gonna cost us $10,000 a week. So, I mean, right there, 60,000 is 6 weeks. That's why I went to law school. I can't figure it out. But, I mean, during that, is that enough time to get the bids out? Or is it something that, I mean, we've gotta do this.
Truthfully, how I'd like to do it. Let's say 60,000 to get this going. Let me get a contractor in by the end of the week, and we'll start. I will get hard figures as close as I can. I will discuss it with Lynn. She can, does that sound reasonable to you, Lynn? And I'm gonna do everything I can to keep this number as low as possible, but please, you gotta understand, this is a serious situation we've got occurring here again.
Well, if we authorize up to 60,000 right now, that would at least get this company in to do the bypass, right?
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, is that something that we can live with, or is it, do we wanna try to get this thing, I mean, I'm just looking at this practically. I
gonna
mean,
be
if you
back
get
for
the
more.
hard,
I'm
if
gonna
you get
tell
the
you.
hard figures in, right, about some quotes, I mean, if you get some quotes right away, I mean, that's one thing, if we have an idea what these companies would quote us, you know, sooner than later, as far as replacing, doing the whole project, while we're paying for the bypass to get the area dry enough that you can actually dig it up. I just don't wanna spend $60,000 for 6 weeks of a bypass and then get these quotes in and say, okay, it's gonna be another,
Absolutely.
8 weeks, for you to do this bypass, and on top of that, you
Try
gotta
to do
pay.
this all in one major contractors show up, bypass people show up on the same day, and we start, and hopefully 7 to 10 days, this job, 12 days outside is done and over.
Okay, so I mean, as far as getting the numbers from the quotes for the project, you think you might be able to get them to us by next week?
Yeah.
Okay.
But
Do you
I
have a
mean, I
feel
don't
for
wanna
how long
wait
it
for
takes them
2
to
weeks,
stage?
though. What's that?
How long it takes them to stage for the bypass stuff?
They'd have it set up in an afternoon.
Okay. If that were an emergency circumstance, does the price just escalate unbelievably?
And here's the problem, though, if it's an emergency situation, Glenn, we don't have that timeline.
No, I get that.
Because
I
when
guess-
sewer backs up, we dealt with that about 2 years ago at Colonial Acres, if you remember, and we don't want that to happen.
I'm just wondering if you could sort of keep whoever the bypass people were abreast of what the circumstances are so that they would know that you might end up having to
I've
call
had
them at a
that
drop.
talk with them.
Yeah, okay. I
They
kind of
want a
assumed you
retainer.
did.
They want a retainer,
Yeah,
yeah.
okay. All right.
So I don't know if I've given you proper direction. I just know that I'm gonna try to get this job done in the next 2 weeks, complete and over.
I would almost prefer not putting a dollar amount and just giving you authorization rather
To
than,
get going on it.
yeah, right.
Yeah.
That's almost how now that I think about this, I mean, it is serious and,
I like that.
you
and
know,
I,
I hate having a blank check, but
no,
it's
believe me,
pretty-
you
yeah.
know, I'm going to watch the,
Right.
I'm gonna be on this, believe me. And we need HRC to take a look at this with us. This is a pretty serious job right here, guys.
So how should we frame this then?
And Bob a pot of gold.
we take it from the 300.
Yeah, give Bob a blank check and hope he doesn't spend a lot of money.
Bob, would you consider the services that are being provided with respect to the technical assistance in diagnosing this problem and fixing it part of professional services?
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, let's go back to my question. How should we
Yeah, how do we word it?
word this? Motion, I guess I can make the motion, to allow Mr. Martin, I guess, authority, I don't even
To
excuse my
begin,
language, but
to begin dewatering or
to,
to begin the bypass and determine the best contractor in cost and experience to start the work.
okay, that was, Harvey's motion.
You want to make the motion, Harvey? Go ahead.
I was trying to just be. That was good. Is that all right?
Yes.
I didn't mean to
I think I'm
interrupt
gonna
you.
have 3 bids on my desk by Wednesday, Thursday at the latest. Because 2 have been working on them already, and 1 guy was out on the job today, then came and looked at video we had. So I think I'm gonna have 3 bids and have a real good number Wednesday or Thursday of this week.
Just
No,
authorizing,
I liked your motion.
authorizing Bob to.
No, whatever you said, I seconded it, so.
Discussion.
Thank you.
As to the motion, I conclude, and council can support it if they would like, that there's no advantage to city council that this particular motion, and the funds requested in this motion, be sent out for competitive bidding due to the serious nature of the situation, and also that the expenditure requested for in the motion is for professional services, thus exempting us out of competitive bidding for this particular matter.
Sounds good.
Yeah. But guys, you're going to get 3 bids anyway, so
Yes, sir.
you'll have your
But you
pick.
got the flexibility.
We have a motion, we have a support.
Yes.
Have discussion, any further? All in favor?
Aye.
Those against? No? Okay,
Thank you very much.
thanks, Bob.
Good luck on that, Bob.
Water.
Water always wins.
It does.
All right. Consider a resolution asking for repeal of the new language in section 57, subsection 3 of the PA 269 of 2016.
Okay, this was brought to the city on behalf of the Michigan Municipal League as well as several other organizations that are working to have the language that was adopted recently repealed and revised. The governor did sign this into law on January 6th. However, he at the same time released a letter calling upon the legislature to enact new legislation to address the concerns raised by the league and the other organizations. The other organizations include the Michigan Association of Counties, Michigan Townships Association, Michigan Association of School Boards, Michigan Association of School Administrators. Issues with the language include the fact that in the previous language of Section 57 appropriately provided for allowances for elected and appointed officials to express their views without fear of violating the act. The new subsection does not appear to account for that allowance. The prohibition on any communication by television that references a local ballot question would put every public access broadcast of a city council meeting at risk for violating this new provision, as there's no allowance for the public broadcast of a debate or voter forum, even if the forum is hosted by a third party. Any community newsletters or potentially even election day reminders that are mailed to residents would be banned under this language. And because this language specifically bans communications only on local ballot questions, the provision creates an inconsistent treatment between communicating with residents on statewide ballot versus local questions. Any violation of this section does put a community at risk for a state fine of up to $20,000 and an individual for a fine of up to $1,000 or a year in jail. The law took effect immediately and is currently affecting multiple jurisdictions with ballot issues on the agenda for March 8th. So we have been asked by the involved parties as an organization to pass a resolution asking for a repeal of the language and, if not full repeal, a revision of the language. And the resolution that you have is part of the sample resolution that was drafted by all of the involved parties.
Joe?
So I have a few comments on this, and I may sound like I'm all over the place because I have a bunch of different thoughts, but I'll try to get the point as best as I can. Ultimately, I think the purpose of this bill, the concept of it, there's a lot of problems with this bill, okay? And I think people recognize that. But the concept of it, which if it was just limited to saying that public funds cannot be used for influencing an election, I think that's good. I don't think taxpayers should pay for literature to go to their houses to tell them how to vote. I just think that's a waste of tax money. But that aside, I just wanted to get that out there. That's my personal feeling. That aside, what we're asked to vote on, I'm kind of offended that it's before us here, because this is really just a piece of paper. This is not, we're going to vote on this resolution encouraging them. This is just a symbol. This is not real substance. It's just, they want us to encourage them to, I mean, this is Lansing politics. At a local level, we should not be involved in Lansing's politics. If they're working on a fix, that's fine. But just because the MML tells us or recommends that we should pass some resolution that's not going to change a bunch of lawmakers who probably don't know what they're doing, most of them don't know what they're doing anyways, that doesn't really mean much by passing this. So that was my comment. And then my other comment was the MML did the same thing, as I recall, in right before the May election, urging us to pass a similar resolution for the road millage, road tax vote, which failed miserably, 80 to 20%, and the MML was in favor of it. So I'm not involved. I'm not in favor of getting involved in their politics. Leave that to the MML. They have their own lobbyists. They can lobby Lansing themselves. I'm not a lobbyist. I don't want to have any part of it, so I'm a no vote.
Mr. Ryan?
Mike?
My concern is that this doesn't affect the state of Michigan. It affects local communities. Basically, the state of Michigan is telling local communities what we can and cannot do as far as advocating. For instance, if we wanted to advocate a road millage, I believe under this legislation, I don't know if we could do that. I'm not saying, I'm talking hypothetical.
Well, it's a timeline that we
Right,
couldn't.
right. Well, within 60 days of the election. If you have a school board that is trying to advocate a millage for the schools, for instance, what we just passed not too long ago, when all the improvements are going to be made to South Lyon Community Schools with the addition of a new elementary school, upgrading existing schools, I don't think the school board, within 60 days of the elections, could advocate their position based on this language, and that's my concern. I mean, as a taxpayer, I want to know why somebody is advocating something, like, for instance, a school board. I want to know why. I want to know what they're asking for and why. And if they have to use funds to be able to convince me to vote the way they want us to vote, I would like to at least have the information available to be able to make an informed decision. And I'm just a little concerned, and I understand the use of public funds and everything like that, but heck, I want to know what I'm voting for. And if the proponent of something that's trying to get me, in this case, a school board, is trying to say, hey, we want you to vote this way because of this, and this is what it's going to offer, then at least I'm a little bit more informed than I was if I didn't have that information. So I'm just concerned on the limitations that the state of Michigan is trying to put on local communities in order to advocate a certain position if they're going that way. That's my concern with this.
Megan?
I had an opportunity to talk to some individuals in Lansing, and I'm just going to provide what, their talking points. I'm not saying I agree with them, but this is some of the justification for why this particular law went through, is that what some communities were doing is when it came time to send out literature and campaign for particular ballot items that benefited their community, they were using local politicians in those ads. So if you were a Democrat and you were running for office that fall, then they would put your picture there supporting it, and it was construed as having a serious conflict of interest with respect to what was actually going in the communication. So I think they probably felt that if we restricted it 60 days before, then we can be political neutral and move forward. So if the city would use these communications and be political neutral and just provide it as an informational thing, that would be fine. But I think that was the first issue. The second issue was you have some super PACs that are out there that want the business, quite frankly. And now I think what happens is that the super PACs, you can retain a super PAC to actually conduct the campaign, which means I don't know, and you would have to check this, but I don't know if you would be in violation of the statute if you hired a super PAC to do your campaigning for you, because that way you are not actually engaging in the distribution. So there was this was more of a super PAC kind of legislation that went through to favor the super PACs. So that, for whatever it's worth, you can fact find it, fact check it or whatever, but that's what I was told. And I kind of agree. I'm just not real in favor of supporting MML's political agendas and whatever they're doing. But that's what it is. Thank you.
Councilman Kibble?
The problem with all this kind of stuff is, just as this super PAC is some way to circumnavigate around what the new language law is, so it's going to be an endless fight of people trying to find some loophole that they can just ignore what the intent of things are. I guess, and you always have the bad actors, school boards that say we're going to bring all this fancy stuff, and if you don't do it, then we're going to pull busing, and I mean all these really harsh issues and redresses to try to force your hand. At the same time, we're all vulnerable to, we have some kind of a package that we would like to get support for, and you get some renegade group that will just sit there and lie about a host of things, and this would cripple your ability to actually set the record straight. To say nothing of the fact that, like this, if this remains intact, then we won't be able to even opine on these things within 60 days to your neighbor or anything like that, or you're in violation of the act. So that just seems absurd to me. So I'm all in favor of trying to pull the plug on this kind of a thing. So I will support this. And the league isn't any different than any other group that comes up with ideas. You hit them right sometimes and you blow it other times. So we've gotten the benefit of their efforts a heck of a lot more often than what we've taken it on the chin from them. So with that, I'll make a motion that we support this. Oh God, I can't even see it. The repeal of PA 269 of 2016.
Support.
Further discussion? Yeah, I'd just like to reiterate that this is just a piece of paper. This doesn't really mean anything. Legislators are gonna do what they want, so we can pass whatever we want, saying we feel a way, but again, I don't feel that we should be influencing or telling people how they should vote, so that's my final
Mr.
comment.
Mayor, I have a comment too. I believe, I mean, this is kind of a broad statement, this is personally how I feel, but every day our rights are getting restricted a little bit more. And this particular law is putting restrictions a little bit on freedom of speech, and I'm not in favor of that, so I will also be voting no on this as well.
We have a motion, we have a support.
I wanted to
I have
actually
a
kind of,
comment.
a quick little thing that, although this isn't actionable, it does influence legislators. If there's a groundswell of support for this kind of thing, that will influence their review of this, so.
Harvey?
I have a question as to the motion, Glenn.
Yes?
Did you move to repeal the whole statute?
Well, it
or
says
was
section 57 subsection C, or 3,
Three?
excuse me.
Okay.
And I didn't say that. But that was my intention.
Okay, so you've amended your resolution then?
I did.
Or your motion?
Yes.
And whoever seconded still seconds it?
I do.
And I support it as well, because I think the legislature just rammed that through without giving any thought to what the locals' needs are in terms of supporting voter support for their projects. Thank you.
All right, we've had a motion, we had a support. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Against?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. or
Motion
not?
carries. Approval of the city manager to attend the MLGMA Winter Institute.
As part of the requirements necessary for maintaining my status as an ICMA credentialed manager, as well as ongoing professional development which benefits the city of South Lyon, I am seeking permission of the council, as required by my contract, for permission to attend the Michigan Local Government Managers Winter Institute, February 3rd to the 5th in Port Huron. I provided you with a copy of the agenda and tried to highlight the specific sessions that I think will benefit to the community, particularly Marketing Your Community 101, meeting with the DDAC and Homeland Security on different issues, Marketing Your Community 201, Marketing for Redevelopment, Marketing Your Community 301, writing a redevelopment RFP, which are specific things that we're looking at doing for 390 Lafayette. These are all very important issues, as well as attending the budget and financing sessions, et cetera, and as I said, from the ongoing professional development.
John?
Come
You know, we recognize the benefits of the city, to the city for employees to receive advanced training for their jobs. I think that same reasoning should be extended to the city manager, so.
Mary?
Lynn, I was just curious, have you been to any of these kind of events before?
I went to the summer conference this summer and did bring back several ideas. We talked about placemaking at that time. Traverse City was the location for that. That was actually the Michigan Municipal League Conference. I attempted to attend the Boyne Mountain Summer Conference, went for one day and was called back to the city for emergency situations here that had to be dealt with, so I was unable to complete the conference.
Did you find the conferences that you did attend helpful?
Yes.
Resourceful?
Very much so.
Okay. Again, I agree with Councilman Kivel. I think that we should always be promoting further education, and this will only benefit the city, so I'm on board 100%.
John?
Joe?
Oh, so my question is, for your required training, can you elaborate how many hours you have to do? Because I don't have the contract in front of me, or no.
To remain a credentialed manager, I have to do 40 hours of training. That can be a combination of attending workshops, reading books, and other training opportunities. In the last year, I have used several free training opportunities through the MMRMA and the MML to extend the 40 hours so that there's no cost to the city using those sessions here in the local Detroit area. I do read professional development books, continue to maintain my knowledge base and expand it on capital budgeting, on union negotiations, and other areas of professional development.
So the 40 hours is pretty general, okay. Next question is the Port Huron location. Are you going to be driving or staying overnight?
I would drive up there on the first morning on the 3rd and stay 2 nights returning on Friday.
Okay, I mean, if it's snowing, yeah, I wouldn't want you on the roads. Me personally, if I was in your spot, I'd want to save taxpayer dollars. I would drive, me personally, but that's just me. But of course, if it's snowing, you want to take any chances of driving to Port Huron. I mean, it's an hour and a half. I mean, I have meetings for my personal career where I have to be at a plant or wherever that's 2 hours away, and they expect me there at 8 o'clock. So I get up and I go. But I won't beat that point up. But my last comment is I agree we should be offering training and events. But I would hope going forward that we could do the ones that are not in Boyne Mountain or Traverse City, someplace that are a little bit closer, so it's more of a learning opportunity, not a party destination or something. So that's my only comment.
More perception.
Yeah.
Harvey?
I just didn't see a copy of the cost in here.
The conference itself is $395.
Okay, thank you.
I think John is.
Maggie?
I move that we approve the.
One more.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. I also agree, that's kind of been my mantra since I've been here, is training and retraining and certifications and commending employees for taking the initiative to get out there and get up to par. One thing I do find valuable in these seminars is the networking opportunities that you will have. I recently went to the MML conference or whatever, seminar for newly elected individuals, and the networking opportunities were phenomenal. I mean, I have a list of people and cards that I am now in contact with and have found their guidance, and one individual actually from a mentoring standpoint I think is going to be very, very helpful for me. That I'm going to enjoy. So I think this is good that you're doing this. I would like, since you have it highlighted, I would be very curious in seeing the materials regarding marketing your community, writing a redevelopment RFP. I mean, that's something that I would just personally be interested, since I have a strong interest in the downtown. I would be interested in seeing what kind of documents they're providing for that. And marketing your community, I see where you have those highlighted, so you've got some good areas that are here. What's the issue on Homeland Security? I'm just curious.
That is on dealing with all of the immigration issues. As we all know, the Detroit metro area is a border area, and there are some concerns with making sure that every community is aware of what we can and can't do to restrict any types of immigration into our population.
That's interesting. I'd like to see those if I could.
Certainly.
And I'd also like to look at that. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I also have a comment.
Mary?
I just have a quick question. Do you have a stipend for gas?
No, I have a car allowance, so I get paid a flat fee to use my vehicle for the entire month.
Okay, would you be able to use that toward driving to Port Huron instead of getting a hotel?
I could, but
I don't mean to be cheap. I just mean to be in the spirit of saving taxpayer dollars, no matter how small. That's the only reason I bring it up.
The only thing, I agree with what Joe says. I've come from the same plant situation, but if I knew I was going to be at that plant for 3 days, I'm not driving 3 days,
An
2.5 hours or 2 hours, whatever it may be. I'm gonna work out with my company to be there because
Networking as well.
that's just the way it goes, to be driving every single day back and forth. Some things come up, things happen in the transit or whatever, weather becomes bad. I think we create an extra influence on the entire training event, and we know it's in one particular place. If it was moving around, it'd be a different story, but everybody's going there for one spot, for one reason. And so I disagree a little bit with the getting up and driving somewhere every single day for that length of time somewhere. But one time, yeah, absolutely, drive.
It's a 3-day event, correct?
Yeah.
So what, a
Like
hotel
if I-
room's $200 a night,
Right, but
$600?
if I'm working in Port Huron on a business project outside of politics, I'm not gonna drive every single day to Port Huron if I'm going to be there 8 o'clock morning till 9 o'clock at night or 8 o'clock at night, participating in a training event or participating in a planning event within the company. They would basically take care of my 3 days there.
I understand that, but again, I
So,
agree to disagree with you
yeah.
on this one, just because I feel like if you add on $600 plus the $400, we're just rounding figures up, that's $1,000 that you're spending on a retreat to learn, and I think it's a small sacrifice on the
But
city
you
manager's
lose the
end.
training money also if she doesn't make it there.
Well, be on time.
What if
Be
some-
early.
What I'm saying is though, is if things do come up in transit, that we have
Snow,
we
I
have
understand.
not just snow, accidents, traffic, all kinds of things come into play when you're driving that length of time on that kind of highway.
Trust
for
me,
that
I get
far.
it. I get it.
Been doing it for years.
Well,
So
let me-
it's,
Mr. Mayor, I would like to add a different dimension to this, is that this is a different type of learning tool. This is a seminar where you do not stop at 5 o'clock. I have been to these seminars. I do more continuing education in real estate than I do in law. And when I go to those seminars, the most valuable part sometimes is the networking that is after 5 o'clock, where you're sitting down till 10 o'clock at night discussing with other intellectuals in that field regarding ideas that you do not have time during that seminar to do. During that seminar, she is there to learn from that instructor, take care of those materials, and I'll tell you, she's going to be on a fast rope. And this is just one thing, is that I would rather have 5 hours of networking that may produce 2 or 3 contacts that we can use to better our community. You defeat the purpose of going to a seminar when part of the component of the learning process is the actual networking that goes with it. If she wants to stay up to midnight and talk to 15 other people about issues regarding a DDA, then, we're in a position right now where we need that information. And I'd rather her sit there and get that information than driving home and missing out on opportunities that other communities are getting because their city managers are staying there and staying overnight. That's just my 2 cents.
Follow-up question, just curious, is there other, just for my knowledge in the future, is there other events that are, let's say, in Dearborn or Novi or Farmington?
The next conference put on by the MLGMA is the summer conference, and it is up north again. I don't remember right offhand. I can look.
Okay, I was just curious, that's fine.
most of these training
Most of
tend to do that. I mean, they tend to.
They're enticements,
yeah,
absolutely.
They're enticements,
Yeah,
right. I also like the idea of going now, in a sense, really close, because we're having our strategic planning session, hopefully. And I think it'll help yourself and learning from what they're doing. Maybe you'll find some ideas there that might benefit us as well, like Maggie said. You have a couple of things on your list there about the downtown and some things for marketing. And that could fall very well into our strategic planning within the group. So I'm a definite
Sometimes the most
supporter of it.
valuable stuff that's gleaned from these things
Yeah.
is some treasure that had nothing to do with the agenda of the, the conference, so.
Yeah, the
a
whole
discussion
networking-
with a city manager that had a similar problem and how they solved it, that might be compatible with our needs, I
I
mean.
think there's dinner and cocktails included. That's a good opportunity to network. Just saying.
Glenn, did you make that motion?
Do it again.
Yeah. To approve the city manager to attend the MLGMA Winter Institute.
I'll second.
We have a motion, we have a support, a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, I wrote this down, but I didn't write. Consideration, this is one you brought, Tim. Consideration to waive,
Yeah, so I can give a little introduction. At the January 11, 2016 council meeting, there was a discussion at the end of the meeting regarding 2 poverty exemptions that were granted by the city's December Board of Review. There has been a criminal complaint filed with the South Lyon Police Department, and that issue has been turned over to the Oakland County Sheriff's Office Special Investigations Unit. The city manager, myself, and the city clerk have been contacted by the investigator for the sheriff's office regarding this issue to discuss the circumstances regarding the allegation. And the request that I'm making on behalf of myself and the city manager and city clerk is that council approve a motion waiving the attorney-client privilege to allow us as city staff to speak freely and openly with the investigator regarding these allegations.
That seems like a no-brainer. I mean, they have to, have to provide their view of how this whole thing had taken place and whatever they've got to answer, so.
Well, I'll make the motion that we allow the city attorney to waive the attorney-client privilege in response to the poverty exceptions.
Well, I want to be careful because, so the request is that council, as the client, the city, waive the attorney-client privilege. As an attorney, I can't waive the attorney-client privilege.
Right, we have to give you permission.
This is a motion to approve the city council waiving the attorney-client privilege and authorize the city manager, city clerk, and city attorney to meet and speak with the Oakland County Sheriff's Office investigators regarding the allegations pertaining to the 2 poverty exemptions that they're investigating.
Well, I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
Discussion?
Maggie?
I have some additional information on this, which I think is fair to bring out to the public. This is presented to me some very, very serious consternation, and I will disclose that I'm the one that filed the complaint, and I think it's important for you to understand why it was filed. Not anything against you personally, it was the predicament that I was put in. Assisting me on this matter actually has been several professionals. So I've had to go out and find professionals, including one of them is Carl Christoph. He's a criminal defense attorney. Actually, I had to get a criminal defense attorney that has an exemplary background and about 30 years of experience in criminal defense. Basically, what happened was that City Council received a letter that was prepared by the city attorney regarding certain matters that was in the Board of Review's December 2015 letter. That letter, dated January 4th, contained statements that basically pled a prima facie case of perjury. That was the problem. The perjury was related to a Board of Review matter. As of January 11th, at the City Council meeting, Attorney Christoph, my attorney on this matter, advised me not to attend any closed session on this matter because if I had obtained any more facts regarding the prima facie case, I could have been charged as an accessory after the fact, along with everyone else in City Council. Yeah, I understand, but I've gone to a criminal defense attorney. I have received professional guidance on this, and there have been other individuals that have looked at this. So it was really only by a small miracle that we did not go into closed session that night because I did not gain any more knowledge regarding the prima facie case. And it's important to note that the only facts that I have for the prima facie case were obtained through the letter prepared by you. Further, when I filed the report for investigation with the chief of police on Wednesday, January 20th, no one in the city had even contacted the chief regarding review of that particular matter. The problem was 2. Number 1, as a publicly elected official, it was my duty to uphold the laws and to always engage in ethical and moral decision-making, and it always will be for me a matter of public trust. So I was a publicly elected official. I had evidence of a prima facie case of perjury, and Nobody was dealing with it, but I had the knowledge. That was the problem. That was problem number one. Problem number two, from the ethics advisor, was that the failure to report the perjury or the prima facie case made me personally, I can't speak for any of the other lawyers that are here tonight.
don't, because we're
But,
not
excuse
acting as an
me, is that it made me vulnerable to challenges to my license to practice law. So as a lawyer, I had a duty and responsibility to uphold the Michigan Code of Professional Conduct. And I could not prevent or risk my license of somebody filing a complaint against me for conduct unbecoming a lawyer. So my attorney directed me to get out of the chain, the daisy chain of the knowledge of the prima facie case, get out of it and report it. Just get out of it. And then that takes care of any issues with respect to your license, and it takes the place of other issues, having knowledge of a prima facie case with respect to the city. So it's quite possible that your interpretation of the documents that you received and the conclusions that you came to in the January 4th letter was an error. I don't know. I don't have a clue. Maybe your assessment of what happened is correct. I don't know. All I know is that a prima facie case for perjury was stated in that letter, and I had a reason to believe that the city attorney was correct in his analysis of the facts, reviewed the documents, and those statements pled a case of perjury. So my obligation to report came from the letter on January 4th. That's all it is. And all I'm doing is getting out of the loop, and I don't want to be tagged with any knowledge of any criminal activity that potentially is or was alleged in that letter of the 4th. So whether there's an investigation going on, I'm sure there is. People will be asked questions, but let the police sort it out. Let them sort it out, because failure to do so leaves the perception.
Well, I think that's where we're at right now. I
Leaves the
agree,
per-
Maggie, that you've definitely
I've
stated
done
your
the-
case. and
Believe
you-
me, I've done the right thing. I've had experts take a
Right,
look
but
at this.
Maggie,
You know,
Let's let the
excuse me.
process do what it's
I'm
supposed
not
to
finished.
do.
I'm right now represented by an attorney, so anyway,
saying
however,
the
I'd
same
like to
thing.
let it know that if I receive information regarding criminal activity, and it's from a reasonable source, and the facts have been pled for a prima facie case as to matters pertaining to the city, and I have reason to believe that person is credible, I'm not gonna wait weeks to contact the chief of police. The warning shot over the bow is that it will only be days or hours, because I'm not going to go through this again. I have no interest, I have no stake in the results of this investigation. Absolutely none. I don't care how this gets resolved. My only issue is that you cannot plead a prima facie case of any crime, including the perjury, by divulging some of the facts to public officials and to lawyers and expect the silence. You can't do it. I met with the investigators on Sunday. They were phenomenal, they were wonderful, and they were really, really good people. And I just think that they're gonna take a very common sense approach to this, and I just think people just need to accept this as an opportunity to take a look at how we're doing business, how we're moving forward, and maybe be careful about how things are worded in a letter, because this is what happens. If you word something in a letter and it meets the prima facie case, the elements of a crime, and involves the city, and nothing is done, I will not, under any circumstances, risk my license to practice law. That's the bottom line right here. But I think, I'm confident that in a month or so, we are all going to be here in the same room with the same people, and we're going to move forward, and we're going to all be working together. All of us. That's just my personal opinion. So that's it. I mean, I've given a full disclosure.
Mike?
Just for the purposes of disclosure, are you representing to the council that you are acting as an attorney on behalf of the city of South Lyon?
No,
Are you representing to the council that you're acting as an attorney for the city council?
Your questions are not even relevant to the issue.
Please answer the question.
No, I'm not going to.
Okay, fine.
I'm not under court order.
So you're saying that you are acting as an attorney, and as an attorney,
No, I have
you
an
are
attorney.
concerned with statements that were made.
I
right?
have an attorney,
I know. Who's that attorney again?
Carl Christoph.
Great.
You can call him.
I will.
His phone number is 248-229-2972. 30 years criminal defense work. He's got more experience than you do, counsel.
Yeah. Thanks, Maggie.
That's
Appreciate
okay.
that. Well, since the issues before I made a motion to waive the privilege, I have some concern whether or not Ms. Kurtzwell, since she is the complainant, should be allowed to vote on this motion. So I think we might have to make a motion to recuse Ms. Kurtzwell from voting on the issue of whether or not we can waive the attorney-client privilege, since she appears to have already waived the attorney-client privilege by citing language or referencing language that was protected in a letter which stated clearly on the letter that it was attorney-client privilege to the city council. So I don't know if we have to address that first, or if we can proceed to the motion and allow her to vote on a motion to allow the city attorney, the city manager, and city staff the opportunity to defend themselves against allegations made by Ms. Kurtzwell.
They're not made by me. That's the issue you're missing. The allegations of the prima facie case were not made by me.
But you filed a criminal complaint alleging, in fact, what did you allege against the city attorney and
You
the
can,
city
you can, you
manager?
can read the report.
You filed the complaint. No, seriously, you're making these statements. I would like to know what criminal activities you alleged against the city attorney and the city manager.
Okay, I'm gonna, on the advice of counsel,
Mr. Mayor?
Joe.
If I could come on this, I've said this before, and I don't mean to sound like a broken record, but I'm not an attorney, obviously. I mean, we're 3 attorneys up here. I think there's no room for one more. I don't have any inkling to even want to be an attorney, but something just seems off. I don't know the legal implications, but I do know when something's not right and it's coming from somebody, a city employee who's supposed to represent the city, and something's not right, you need to do what we all have an obligation to do as elected officials, is to come forth and bring it to the attention of the proper authorities. That's what we swore to uphold, and that's our responsibility. Now, as Ms. Kurtzweil said, the investigation will play itself out, okay? So the results of the investigation, time will tell. But in the meantime, if there's any inkling of any wrongdoings or whatever the case may be, we have an obligation to come forth. It's that simple. So I give credit to Ms. Kurtzweil for having the guts to do this. She may take heat from council. There may be people who want to keep this quiet, but we owe it to the residents of South Lyon, whatever happened, to not stay quiet and give full transparency. So, Ms. Kurtzweil, I applaud you for doing what I think is right. And I know what it's like to be in a situation where a city official makes false claims or is involved in some wrongdoings, because I've experienced it personally. I'm not going to point anybody out, but it was retraction was made saying that there was no involvement from me, and it was troubling. So we've seen this go on in the city. This is what we need to clean up. This is what we need to move forward. So that's all I have right now.
I'm going to say something on this because I've been quiet during all of this, and I'm not going to disagree with what the, I don't even know how to say this, what the process is here, but it's like there's some things that between politics and business that are not right. And to be in front of people talking about very privileged information that's been stated that way in public is not a good move. Whether it's right or wrong, and whether the crime or non-crime took place, you're right, the process will work itself out. It will reveal what the situation is. We're at this point now. And I wish we weren't here at this point right now. This is not how it's supposed to go. I'm sorry. That's my opinion.
That's your
And
opinion.
I'm not going to tell you at this body that I'm wrong. I think people use transparency of government as a shield, and I don't believe people understand what that really means. And as mayor and as a person, and in having 25 years in business and doing real estate and doing other things as well, I've never had to deal with this in my entire life. So I want to get that out there and say that even though you have your opinions, fine, so do we. And it doesn't make yours right. Maybe it doesn't make ours either. But it needs to be stated that there's other ways to look at this and there's other ways to handle things sometimes. And it doesn't mean you got to put the gloves on and start fighting right away. We have a strong body of people up here, and we're going to have a strong body of opinions time and time again, I'm sure. And my hope is we handle it better than this. So.
Mr. Mayor, I have a couple comments to make. I'm going to play devil's advocate here and also commend you, Maggie, because I think it takes a lot of nerve to do what you did, because you're cleaning up South Lyon in a way. If there is any type of crime afoot, Maggie is setting the standard, and she's setting it right now by sending a message: don't mess with South Lyon. Don't mess with this new council, because you can't, if there is fraud, if there's forgery, if there's any kind of perjury, she's sending the message. It's not going to fly. So good for you. Also, I wanted to...
I'm going to interrupt you just.
Well, let Mary finish. Let Mary finish.
And I don't
Let Mary
interrupt.
finish.
It's okay, go ahead,
No,
go ahead.
She's
That's
giving
fine,
me
go ahead.
permission. It's not about cleaning up South Lyon.
If there is crime afoot, is what I said.
It's not about cleaning up South Lyon. My experts, clearly, it is about protecting my license to practice law.
You took an oath. You took an oath to the
I
city,
am
and you took an oath to the law.
There isn't a judge around that will not tell you that as a lawyer, you are an officer of the court.
I know this.
Okay.
You're talking to somebody who's going to
I'm
be a
just
lawyer
telling you.
soon. Yeah, I completely understand what you're saying. But on the flip side of this, I also see what Mike is saying, and I do believe there is a conflict of interest because you did file a complaint. The vote, you
Oh, I don't have
couldn't-
to vote. I don't have to vote.
Because I just, for everyone else's sake who's in the audience who doesn't understand, I think the conflict of interest is there. If you filed the complaint, you should have to recuse yourself from voting. There's a conflict there.
Mm-hmm.
But again, I commend you for integrity that you have. And if you
I
see
will-
something wrong, you say it. You say it.
I will
which
tell
is good
you,
for you.
I have had several judicial individuals who have said, it's a difficult decision, but it would have been more difficult if you would have been grieved, because failure to disclose, no doubt you would have lost
You
your
took
license.
two oaths, one to the legal aspect
Yeah.
of this, but also one to South Lyon.
And
And that oath has to be upheld, but at the same time, though, for the people who the complaint was filed against, if you are worried about this, I mean, that's your own issue, but at the same time, you shouldn't have anything to hide or be worried
I
about.
think there's going to be an amicable resolution of this. I think it's possible that maybe different wording, that people have different interpretations of wording, and maybe the wording in the January 4th letter was a little strong, and maybe, did not intend to plead the prima facie case for perjury. Maybe that's just a learning issue, and all of that is clearly defensible. I just think that they're gonna do their job. I am extremely confident that we're all gonna be here together, all of us, with no injury to our licenses or anything. I am quite confident of that. But my sole interest was, and for you who is not licensed, if this had been an issue raised for you, you would have not passed character and
Character and
fitness.
fitness. Absolutely.
Absolutely. You
have a
better
point.
read the.
Let's put
I'm
a
just-
stop
I'm
right
just-
now. I know, we're getting
You're
into
kidding.
all kinds of ethics.
100%
and
right,
legal
though.
issues.
let her go on
No, she's
forever.
100% right, though.
So, digging this is unbelievable, Maggie.
Well,
It's unbelievable.
Sounds like you don't like what you're hearing, is what it sounds like.
You don't like what
because-
you're hearing, my
No,
guy.
no. because
You don't have
the
to get
difference-
defensive,
the difference-
Mike.
No, the difference is this. You have an obligation as an attorney when you are acting as attorney representing a client. Yes, you do.
No, you don't.
That is the distinction, and that's a problem you're having with this council. You can't separate your day job, because you're an attorney in your day job, from what your responsibilities are as a city council member. That's the issue you're having, and that's the issue that's before us right now.
Michael, it sounds
You
like
are
you're putting her
acting
on
as an
trial right
attorney.
now. You're sounding like
Mike-
an
No, you are
attorney.
acting as an attorney. And that's
Okay,
embarrassment to
well,
the city.
everybody,
It's embarrassing.
everybody, everybody, hey,
No, you
everybody,
are very embarrassing,
Mike,
Maggie.
Maggie,
I
everybody,
cannot believe you are
Mike.
actually
So,
up
Michael,
here.
please behave as a lawyer.
Everybody.
Oh, sure. I'm not a lawyer today.
You are.
No, I'm not. I'm a city council
guys,
member.
everybody.
You better talk to the Attorney Grievance Commission.
Yeah, I'm going to talk to the.
All right,
Grievance
here's my
Commission.
take on this.
Unbelievable.
You said one thing that I agree with. Let's let the process do what it's supposed to do. We're not gonna solve anything here arguing with each other about this. There's some legal issues, there's some legal ethics issues between the lawyers. I'm not a lawyer, I'm not gonna profess to know what that stuff is. I just know on the basis of how things get handled sometimes, it doesn't always work the way it's supposed to. I don't know, in law, you're not supposed to convict somebody without a trial, first off. And the way it sounds here, that everybody's accusations are saying that this has already taken place,
No, it hasn't.
and it hasn't. And if it hasn't, there's repercussions to that a little bit. So, we're not gonna settle anything here. We're gonna disagree with each other on how we're handling this. You've made your point, Mike, you've made your point, Mary, you've made your point. So, with that, do we have a motion?
We have Tim's motion. As,
The motion was made, and I believe it was supported.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I'm recusing myself from voting.
Okay.
Okay.
Opposed?
I'm not opposed. Aye. I'm
Motion
not opposed,
carries.
yeah.
Thank you.
So now we're on a discussion of the blight ordinance.
It's not a funny matter. It really, it's not.
I'm laughing
No,
at
it's-
myself because
I know,
I'm
but it's not
frustrated.
funny.
It's
I mean,
not.
we're going back to the Stone
It's
Age
just
now.
pitiful.
Well, listen, Mike, I'm not laughing because I'm laughing. I'm laughing because I'm extremely frustrated. I don't know any other way to handle what's been going on here, and I just stated that.
So,
we're
order
moving
of the
on.
day,
Let's go
order
on.
of the day.
Point of order.
So do we have any discussion on the blight ordinance and then safe structures as we said? We've already talked quite substantially about that today already.
Just one quick question. I know, so now that I understand the process. We passed the first reading, we have to go through a second reading. And Chief Kennedy already identified with the red X's on the buildings. So now, maybe we can, I just want to understand the timeline. Once the second reading is passed for the blight ordinance, when can we start actually, I'm going to say going after, but looking at those properties and developing an action plan? Is there any timeline, 6 months, a year?
Mr. Mayor, if I could address this, so what I've informally spoken with the building official, I haven't had a chance to catch up with Chief Kennedy. I forget the exact timing after the ordinance becomes effective after publication. It's roughly a 15-day, 30-day window. We would be gathering as the building official, attorney, and fire chief to assemble. I think the first step we want to do is identify potential candidates for hearing officer. And simultaneously, I think we want to be meeting to identify and go through and identify the buildings that essentially would be the targets of enforcement. Prioritize those, obtain the necessary information to evaluate the various structures, come up with a plan of action for each of them. And I think the first step is always going to be to try and contact the owner to obtain compliance. And that's always going to be your first step. And, I think the code enforcement officer, Tom Lyon, has already advised that he's heard from the owners of some buildings that would likely be, we'd be taking a look at.
What was their comments? What were their comments that they hope to be?
The first
Helpful.
comment, for those that don't know me, I'm Tom Lyon, I'm the code enforcement officer.
Might as well go to the mic, Tom, so they can hear you on TV.
I normally don't need a mic. I've spoke with a couple owners of buildings, and the first question is, tell me what's wrong.
everybody who I have spoke with, and if, I know it's late, and give me a couple seconds, and I want to address, you brought up South Lyon Woods. I've been dealing with RHP properties for over a year with them. There's been numerous citations, letters, meetings. Dennis Smith and I, with the help of the city manager and the attorney, we met with the property manager. He flew in from Colorado. Over the last 3 months, they've removed 11 units out of there. They're putting in brand-new units. Matter of fact, tomorrow is the electrical inspections. I originally cited those structures as no longer useful for their intended purpose under the blight ordinance. It took a couple letters and a couple meetings. My process is I take pictures of everything I do, I send a letter, and tell them I want to hear what you want to do about it. If I don't receive a response in 14 days or so, I send a follow-up letter. I've got about a 90% compliance rate. 390 Lafayette was, I've been worked on that for a year and a half. Foreclosure came into the picture. So that's the process I do. When I was hired, I asked if you want enforcement or do you want compliance? I was a cop for almost 30 years. I don't like writing tickets. If you talk to people and explain what needs to be done, we're getting compliance. So if you have a specific structure, anybody that you feel needs to be done, tell me what's wrong with it. I've had some comments, or I've had some interaction with some of the council members. There's certain things, because a building is ugly, that's not a violation. You can have ugly buildings. And I tell them, I've told some council people that, unless the structure is, I don't even know how the word is, compromised, unsafe, there isn't a code violation. So first we have to have a violation. I'll contact the owner, instruct them what needs to be taken care of. They're given 10, 14 days or so to give me an action that they're going to take to correct the problem. South Lyon Woods, it went on for, like I said, almost a year. After a few citations, I met with the county prosecutor. We were in the process of going in front of a judge for a hearing, and that's when the maintenance guy from Colorado flew in. They took care of their problems. They've repaired the roads. They've taken 11 units out. They've got 10 more slated to come out, and they're putting in brand new units. I hope I answered your question.
No, well, now the other owners that have contacted you, kind of sniffing around, finding out how is this going to play with them?
I've been in contact with Mr. Bonner. Mr. Bonner and I have a fairly good working relationship. There's issues. He knows there's issues. He said, tell me what's wrong and what needs to be fixed. I'm not a structural engineer. His buildings are structurally sound. The Artcraft building looks terrible. He realizes I've told him there's some facade problems, there's mortar, there's some issues that need to be maintenance. He's going to take care of it. I don't have a timeline. But we're talking, and that's where it started. We've been talking now for about 6 months or so. Everything I've asked him to do, from cutting weeds to clearing the lot behind his building at 111, he does it. He goes out there himself with a lawnmower. You just got to talk to people. I don't believe in a hammer. Yeah.
Who owns South Lyon Woods? You said the property?
It's called RHP Properties. They're local offices out of Farmington Hills.
RHP Properties?
Yes.
Did you ever get a feeling or a sense that if the right developer came through, that they'd sell that property?
No.
Really?
They are a nationwide company. They
huge.
manufacture home parks throughout the country.
That'd be a gorgeous spot for townhouses downtown.
They put a couple $100,000 into that place the last 6 months in roadway and in site improvements with the infrastructure and the work they've been doing in there. And we've had some meaningful conversations. I explained to him in kind of a polite way that the people that live there don't deserve to live in those conditions.
It's horrible.
That's when they started yanking units out. There's animal problems in there. It's
There it is.
mostly feral cats. I have a way to take care of it, but you can't shoot a firearm in the city. So,
Well, if I could. Oh, no, yeah, and I know it's getting late. I just wanted to say, Tom, I think we have a good asset with you.
Thank
And
you.
I know, I like your approach, saying, not taking the hammer. It's like you said, communication. I mean, certainly,
and I appreciate the city manager hiring me. We work together a lot. She helps me a lot, and
yeah.
Good.
I work under
Good.
her and the attorney.
I think I mean, not you, but just in general, the city, if we have to use a hammer, then there's a time and a place. But
Oh, absolutely.
taking the steps as
I
you
have no
are,
problem with that.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
And I work and live in the city.
Oh, perfect.
Good, thanks.
Thank you.
Anything else on that? Same, it's basically the same as the downtown. I don't know if anybody has anything to say about that.
Yeah, I do.
I know I do want to say one thing about the downtown. It's pretty dang evident that this council is talking about the downtown. So if anybody's got any questions out there to believe that we're not concerned, I don't know what meetings you're watching. So, Maggie,
Are we on the downtown section?
yes.
I want to bring this up again, and I kind of want to get council's opinion on where they're at, and this is regarding tax abatements. And I just wanted to let council know that at the last meeting, I talked about Pete's True Value, and they would be willing to put up that structure that they presented to the planning commission. And I don't, first of all, I need to know where council is on tax abatements, because tax abatements for a short period of time can be used to provide an incentive to somebody in the downtown area that we're focusing on to fix up the exterior of the building. I do want to let council know that, once again, Lyon Township's on the move, and I understand, I have not seen it yet, but I want to get over there tomorrow and talk to Lanny and Patty about it. I understand that they have just approved a tax abatement schedule. They are getting phenomenally aggressive about attracting businesses into their community. Depending, basically, as I understand it, is depending on how much you're investing, the number of years for the tax abatement increases, and I think it goes up to about 8 years. So all I'm saying is that they're using a tool that Wyandotte has used, other communities have used in terms of tax abatements, and it's there for the taking, and if we don't, I'm just, that competition is just coming in closer and closer, and they're getting smarter and smarter about closing out opportunities for us, because Lyon Township's going to get very aggressive this year about this. Additionally, I wanted to bring up, and, God love him, Phil Weipert. I can't remember if it was before Thanksgiving or before Christmas, but the snow was flying, and Phil's outside, and he has a guy repairing his sidewalk in front of his building out there on Pontiac Trail. So I go over to Phil, and I offered to give him some chocolate or something, and he was too busy working with the contractor, and he was laughing. And he said, it would be really nice, and Bob, you might be able to add some input on this, it'd be really nice if the city could reinstitute the 50/50 that they had back in the 1980s, where homeowners would pay the cost of repairing their sidewalk, and after you approved it, after you went and said, yes, that's okay, this is a satisfied contractor, the city then would reimburse the homeowner 50% of the cost of repairing the sidewalk. Now, Phil told me that this existed back in the 80s or something. I would just like to say, maybe we should be thinking about this, is, encouraging homeowners to also be part of the program. Apparently, it worked. Phil said just about every sidewalk in the city got fixed, and at half the cost that the city, didn't have to pay for it. So I'd just like to bring that up, concept thought. Additionally, with the Art Institute of Michigan and Maryland, I don't know if this is going to help or not, but you have an Art Institute over in Michigan, and it's with the and the reason I'm bringing this up is that they have retail students that are studying retail and marketing. And why doesn't the DDA contact them and get some interns or get a school project for them to come in, pick a store, and let them spend all quarter coming up with designs and new layouts, new detail, maybe some ideas for window dressing, and have a presentation and say to that owner, here's your free design. Now you have to do is just go out and fund it. So I think there are individuals out there that could assist the DDA on some things. And I'd just like to bring up the Art Institute in Michigan over in Novi as possibly a source for free art services and design services that could help out in a transition period where you don't have the money. So,
well, that's exactly it. With all due respect, you like to speak kind of negatively about the DDA, which has no money. So how does the DDA get anything done when they have no money? And in all the years that I've been going to DDA meetings, for about 7 years probably, not seen you at one.
no, I haven't, because the board has been there. But I think that's the problem. If you're going to look at people's contributions and their constructive criticisms as being negative, that's part of the block. Because you got to have this open mind and realize, hey, we got to do something.
Open the wallet.
Well, yeah, I'm telling you, this is free services.
One thing I look at is one thing I found out, I've been going to these SACMA, I went to one so far, it's the South Oakland County Mayor's Association dinner meeting, meet and greet. You sit with mayors and city managers from other communities in Oakland County. I had the opportunity to sit with Novi's mayor, Northville's newly elected mayor, the city manager, Birmingham, Berkeley, a few others that were there, and it was like, and found some things out, doing just some poking around, and met with the Chelsea mayor and the city manager over coffee, walked around their downtown a little bit, got to know them a little bit, found out there's a difference in how their downtown development association is funded. And I tell everybody, I feel like we're going into a fight with our hands behind our back, because there's such a discrepancy in the way the money that's available, however it gets there. South Lyon is so far behind Northville, Milford, Brighton, Chelsea, even Lyon Township. Maryland is correct. Their hands are kind of tied a little bit, so whether we do anything to alleviate, I agree with you, tax abate, we're fighting a battle against communities around us. We want to be friends with all of them, but we are in business to try to compete for business. But we don't have an endless supply of money to give every single business that wants to come to South Lyon and say, hey, we're going to do this, hey, we're going to do that, hey, we're going to do this. We have other things to deal with. We have water, we have police, we have, we have Bob. We have Bob. So I think we need to talk about that. I think we need to somehow figure out how to get the DDA on topic so we can all discuss what's needed, and whether we decide that discussion or not is we're going to go that way or not. I don't know, but at least we have that discussion.
Yeah.
And we give that availability then to the DDA to see that we're trying to do something. And we may find out that we should be doing it. We also may find out that maybe we're doing the right thing. I don't know. But we need to look further into it.
John,
I just know that we're comparing South Lyon, and it was what? I did not know this. So comparing South Lyon to Brighton, Milford, Northville, I'm sure Howell. My office is in Howell right now. I walk around there all the time during the day, and I'm quite frankly surprised and impressed a little bit of what they've done. There's some things they're lacking on, but they've taken a lot of time and pride in behind the buildings and the side approaches and things like that, and their parking lots and everything, and it's pretty nice. They have problems with their trucks turning downtown just like we do in some areas, but they've done a lot. So I'm assuming, based on the other communities that I found out, I don't know the numbers, so I'm not going to state them, we are way off compared to all those communities. And I just think we need to have the discussion as a council to decide how do we get around that? How do we fix that? Maybe there's more than one way to skin a cat. I don't know. Maybe we decide to make that change at that point in time. Maybe we don't. I think that will alleviate some of the DDA's concerns that everybody's yelling at them and they're not getting anything done. You know, I mean, I think we need to all start working together here, you know, I mean, and that was part of my process when I said, I'm not campaigning for this. I'm just saying, as a resident and as someone that's been here 25 years, there's something that's always been kind of not quite right to me, and this, I found this out, and if I do anything, I'd like to discuss this as a council, as a body, to figure out if there's a way to alleviate the stress that we put on ourselves somehow. And that's my opinion on that, so.
With respect to the DDA, I
Can
mean,
we
there's,
spread the dialogue along? I've been sitting here waiting to.
oh, I'm sorry, I didn't
chime
see your
in,
hand
and
up. I didn't see your hand
It's like
up.
a monologue over there. First off, I'd like to ask if you can find out from them what vehicles they're using to afford abatements in commercial districts. I'm only aware of industrial abatements, nothing in a commercial area.
I'll get a copy of it.
Yeah, if you would, that'd be very helpful. Well, you know what, I'm just going to leave it at that. This is,
Thanks, Glenn.
yeah, this has just been going on unbelievably long.
Well, if I could add some, John. So you mentioned the funding of DDA. I think, yeah, it's hard to say a dollar amount or how much, you know, it should be supported, but definitely I think the way that we should be helping them is assisting them with getting up grants. I mean, that's, again, Lynn, I don't mean to come back to this, but I will. That was one of the reasons why we hired you, was with the grants. And if you're the secretary of the DDA and you're there at the meetings, you should be coming to them with what grants you're going to help them get. Not seeing what I saw the email was there was nothing to discuss at the meeting, so it was canceled, you know. So I don't think that's the right approach. So if the city should be helping the DDA, but it should be giving our employment resources. Now, as regards to financial resources, I mean, yeah, like I said, the grants, but if there's any money we want to set aside for that, it could be discussed at the next, when we have our annual budget, which would be, I don't know. And that would be the proper form, in my opinion, because that's, we go line by line, and we're even talking about breaking it up from 2 days to 1 day, because we've normally done 1 day, but how this council's been going, I would actually favor 2 days. I think that'd be, so we're not here till 2 in the morning, but,
I think we will anyways.
well, my point was, I'm going to have to laugh at that one. That's pretty good. But yeah, having that would be the time to discuss it, is what I'm saying. And I think that was all I had for the downtown discussion. Thank you.
I just think.
I would like to add one more thing if I could. The DDA, I think, would be a terrific vehicle to try to determine what the merchants of the downtown think would be good fits to be neighboring compatible kind of businesses in the storefronts that are right around their buildings. I don't know if they'll accept the responsibility of actually trying to figure that out or not, but if they would, I mean, they've got skin in the game, so it would certainly be of an interest.
Well, the conversation is that the downtown just looks tired and old and nobody gives a rat's behind.
Uh-huh.
That's what I'm hearing from many, many people. People are packing up and leaving. How many businesses do you see sticking around?
Yeah,
They're
well,
leaving.
but what I'm most interested in is trying to identify things that we might be able to overtly try to recruit that type of activity to take a look at a storefront that's available. And if they have some ideas of what are compatible kind of opportunities, that would be really helpful.
No, I understand
Yeah.
that, but I think it's also helpful to try to keep businesses around that you currently have too, before you start working on bringing more in. You have to spruce up the downtown, or nobody's gonna wanna come.
A lot of people don't have the opportunity to go to businesses when they close at 3, 4 o'clock.
Why do you think that is?
Because, I mean, there's no foot traffic. There's no foot traffic. And I totally get that. But at the same time, though, when there's kids that are coming from the high school that are walking or they live around the area and they can't even go get a cup of coffee because it closes at 3 o'clock, what does that say about our downtown?
I think there's one thing I want to say a little bit towards this, because I did have a business in the downtown, and my wife had a business in the downtown, separate after I had mine, and we didn't stay open. We ended up closing. But my wife's business closed for other reasons. It wasn't financial. It wasn't, why we couldn't do it. It was just personal, we had to close it. But I have to say, I said it then when I had my business. You know, when you're in business and you're competing, it's tough. I totally understand it and I totally get it. You know, I mean, you know, your livelihood, your family's on the line, everything's there. You need your time off, you need everything that goes with it. But when I had my business downtown, I would be the only one open till 9, 10 o'clock at night and the entire downtown was closed. I had people in my store because I was open. It took a month or two to convince everybody that I was going to keep my doors open, and being I was the only one on the block with my lights on, it made it pretty difficult. My daughter manages a store at the mall, and it doesn't matter what the store is. The mall has rules on every store that's in that mall that if they close, they're fined. So they have no options. Those stores have to stay open. You go in there on a Tuesday, Wednesday afternoon at 2 o'clock, you could shoot a missile down the hallway and hit nobody. You know, but they have to be there. They have to be there on Thanksgiving night now, because Black Friday is now turned into Thanksgiving night. They're closed 2 times a year, and that's it. So you're competing with that. And I get it, man. You get tired. You don't want to be open and all that. And I've had this discussion with so many business owners downtown, and I totally respect your thoughts. But I was one of those business owners myself, and so was my wife, and we made the decision to stay open and sacrifice the time that was needed. And then it's on the onus of the people in South Lyon also to frequent some of the stores and businesses.
It's not the time. You
I
have
think
no
you're right,
idea
John.
The hours I put in, and very often I'm there late night by myself with the doors locked.
You're really an exception down
Yeah,
there.
but
though.
you're
Yeah, you're the exception.
People to stick around when there's no foot traffic. And I'm not gonna be open.
No, I'm not calling your store out at all. There's other stores down there that they know who they are.
But it's a vicious
Plenty
cycle.
of them are trying to sell to the unemployed because
Yeah.
everyone else is at work, so.
I mean, you go to work in the morning, they're closed. You come home at night, they're closed. What option do I have?
No, I understand.
I have to go to some other community or go to the mall, and I hate going to the mall.
I agree.
So,
At any rate, if you guys could kind of discuss that and see if it springs anything, that would be helpful. We could try to put some energies towards identifying companies that might fit that role, so.
I do think I'd like to see the DDA on the agenda here for us for how the fund, I guess an explanation for all of us of how that funding takes place.
Presentation or something.
Just because there's such a discrepancy between the other cities and us that I don't understand why we are where we are. And it isn't like one particular administration has done this or it's anybody's fault. Things have changed. We just haven't caught up yet with this part, and I think that's the part we need to talk about. Maybe we're okay. I don't know, you know, but I think it's a discussion that needs to take place.
Well, John, great. I don't mean to ask
No,
permission.
that's all I got to say.
That may be a good opportunity, Lynn, during your conference. Talk to these people, the other communities, write up a good report, and maybe you can set aside an agenda for 10 minutes of how they get their funding source and what your plan is for us to improve our situation. And I said we
What's
could
our
talk.
options?
Yeah, and I said we could talk about it at the budget, but we can certainly start before then, you know. And then once we get to the budget, then we can have a consensus that night or those 2 days. But that would be my task for you, is come back with some information that not just I attended, I learned about this. I want to see a presentation, you know, some recommendations. That's it.
I have nothing else. Anyone?
No.
Okay. Manager's report.
Oh, sorry, I have to put on my glasses. Wanted to let the council know that I am meeting with both the South Lyon Salem Joint Library this week to discuss a shared cost sharing on the foundation directory, and I also have a demonstration with eCivis that handles all the federal and state grants. So we are looking into seeking opportunities to provide us with a clearinghouse, essentially, of state, local, and foundation national grants. Beyond that, I don't have anything that's not going to be in the manager's report that goes out tomorrow. We're waiting on one department head that was out ill to turn in her report.
That's fantastic news. I'm so happy that that's like going underway. I'm a huge proponent of grant writing, so thank you.
Council comments?
No, I'm still.
Oh, you have something on there? Okay.
I want to thank you for all these manager reports. You know, Tim's going to be happy. Now I don't have to go over invoices to find out what's going on. I think that this is clearly evidence of just a real strong commitment. I understand things get busy, but, I mean, you did a lot. These were very informative, and I do want to thank you for the detail that you've given in several of them. I didn't get to all of them, but I just really want to thank you, because this, to me, this is important, because I'm employable. I mean, I work during the day, so I can't make it over here to chat at all. So these are very informative pieces of information for me. And once again, I want to commend you on catching up with all of them. I would have been happy with just a couple moving into January, because I understand, December. But it clearly shows that you're analyzing facts, you're putting things together, you're providing recommendations, you're understanding issues with performance bonds, and that's huge for me. So thank you for the incredible effort.
You're welcome.
Mike? Any
No,
council
I don't
comments?
have anything to add.
Anybody?
Oh, council comments?
Yeah, we're going to move on.
Oh, was that your council comment?
Yeah, I guess. I suppose.
Multi-purpose kind
Sure.
of.
Yeah.
This is the first time in 6 years on this council that I am embarrassed to be a council member. We are carrying on like a criminal complaint wasn't filed against our city attorney and our city manager. We are praising the city manager for doing things, yet the same person that's praising is the one that filed the criminal complaint. I don't know what alternate universe everyone's living in, but these are very serious allegations. And the fact that we are carrying on like nothing happened, and that the fact that in a month, somebody's hopeful that, hey, you know what, don't worry about it, it's water on the bridge, everyone's going to still be here, there's going to be no hard feelings, is a joke. You filed a criminal complaint was filed without any discussion with the city council. Yet that same person that filed the criminal complaint had wanted to ask our opinions on tax abatements. It's ludicrous. I mean, I'm so ashamed to be sitting here right now and dealing with these issues when we have no discussions about serious allegations, and we have a single city council member take it upon herself to file a criminal complaint that alleges serious allegations that may affect the livelihood of the city manager and the city attorney, and think that there's nothing, in another month we'll all be here, laughing about it. I'm embarrassed. I am ashamed to be on this council right now. Thank you.
Okay.
Harvey?
I think the less said, the better. Good night.
I'm not going to comment anymore. I made my statement about what I felt about the process of all this. I hope we do better next time. I don't think it's funny. Not happy about the whole situation and how it's gone. I don't know where it's going, but the process will work itself out. I have one good thing to say. We're going to be hosting the SACMA dinner here in South Lyon in February. So we're having the mayors and the city managers and other people come into town. I think it's on Ash Wednesday.
Yes.
And so I'm hoping that we can show off our community in a positive way, because they're all looking to come here and be enlightened. They're very interested. From the people I talked to the last time at the table, they're all very much in favor of our city. They like our city. They're jealous in some cases, which I think is kind of funny, because we feel as though we have all these tremendous problems that we can't overcome, but you would be surprised what their problems are too when you sit down and talk to them. And they're coming here, and we're going to be on show a little bit. And I'm looking forward to presenting our town to them when they're here, because it's going to be good for the city.
We can invite them to watch our meetings.
Yeah, I would love to invite them to lunch.
No, I don't want them to do that.
Don't make me.
Well, my comments aren't directed at Mike, but it kind of prompted me to give my thoughts. I actually take an opposite approach. I've been on council for just over 4 years, and today is actually the day that I'm the most proud. and most happy to be on council. Because in November, the residents of South Lyon took a hard look at our city, and they said, we need to make changes. We need to move forward with new leadership, open policies, transparency, going in the right direction, okay? And they spoke, and they replaced this board with 3 new individuals. And I'm very proud to be still here and to have that transparency taking place today. So I'm not ashamed of anything. In fact, I'm proud. And again, Ms. Kurzweil, I do want to commend you for doing what I think took a lot of guts. And that's one issue, but we still have a lot of issues to address. So to carry on with the meeting, that's what I would expect, no less. So that's what I have to say on that. Regarding the downtown, and specifically the South Lyon, the Lyon Theater, the Lyon as it used to be called, I just want to thank the new owner for stepping forward and taking over that business, and especially in the climate that we have, that's a significant risk for him. And I think that's great that they stepped in. And I was pleased to see that they're having a lot more adult-friendly shows, Star Wars, and they had Hunger Games back in November. So they're really trying to market themselves, and they're trying to be good for this community and survive. So I know I'll be stopping there, and I just wanted to encourage everybody to check them out. Also, I had a question for Lynn, and it's not, I don't want to come across the wrong way, but I heard kind of through the grapevine that you may, and I want to get the facts just to understand, that you may have suggested to some members of the audience that they should limit the comments to 5 minutes or less. I just want to see if that's a true statement.
That is not a true statement. We have had the policy that was presented to the council, but I have never asked anyone to limit their comment time.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure. So just so I'm clear, we don't have right now a policy that says you have to keep a certain minutes or underneath a certain minutes, correct?
Not according to the city's bylaws currently, no.
Okay, so if somebody wanted to speak for theoretically 5 minutes or 6 minutes, they would have that opportunity. Okay, I must have heard some.
It's gone on quite often.
And that's, yeah, well, perfect example. The South Lyon Youth Assistants, they just gave a presentation about what they were doing and what they were up to, and some very valuable information that.
There was an agenda item.
No, they spoke during public comment. It was two weeks ago when they were standing right up
Oh,
there.
I thought you were talking about the rec people here.
No.
Excuse me.
I know, it's getting late too, I know. So they spoke, and they gave some valuable information, and I guarantee they spoke for over 5 minutes, and I would expect no less than that. So I thought that was terrific. So I just wanted to clarify that. I won't beat that point up, though. So that was it. Other than that, I want to wish everybody a good night. Thank you.
2 quick points. I just wanted to give a shout out to South Lyon Fire Department. The annual report, I'm impressed. Very well done with the put together of the package and the fact that we give a lot of assistance to other communities. I'm proud of you guys. And I also want to apologize to the residents of South Lyon because to an extent, I definitely agree with Councilman Kramer. It is somewhat embarrassing that we bicker, and it's a rough road right now, but I'm sure we will weather this storm, so hang in there. Good night.
Okay, I got a couple of things here. I'm going to just read this. I wanted to say how much I appreciate the level of interest some have taken in pushing some of the difficult issues that confront all municipal governments to take a more prominent position in our list of priorities. I'm encouraged to see the promotion of the downtown, its vitality, and efforts for advancing economic development and the redevelopment of underutilized areas as laid out in the soon-to-be-approved master plan. I also truly believe we have a lot of talent in our department heads and their staff, the administration, and the city council to make the most out of the plans of action we will be constructing once we determine our goals and objectives at City Council's March 19th retreat. Although there are many constructive things taking place, all is not well in the kingdom. It's disappointing to see an ongoing and escalating unprofessional behavior on some on council trying to foment distrust in the administration, our consultants, and others on council. Differences of opinion are daily occurrences in both personal and business lives. the active pursuit to characterize these differences in a negative spectrum from a lack of caring to careless mishandling of affairs and very disturbing and unconstructive to help the group determine the best course of action to take in any given issue. I'd ask that we all be honest brokers and look at ourselves as a metaphoric family. You don't get to pick who your family is. You just simply try to make the best of what you've got. I also wanted to ask Bob, there was an awful lot of buzz in light of what's been going on in the Flint area. I'd like Bob to just, if you could just do a quick synopsis of our circumstances and the dissimilarities in Flint and us.
Thank you. Flint is a scary word today. When we turn on the news, it's easy for people's minds to go where that is. People, we do not have an issue here. We are totally different. They have surface water. We have groundwater. They have never treated their pipes for corrosion. We have for 30 years. They have thousands of homes with lead lines. We have none in the entire city. The DEQ issued this letter to us back on October 29th, 2015, reissued it January 25th, 2 days ago, right? What's the date tonight? Right at
25th.
Yeah. Oh, it just came across today. We received your 2015 lead and copper monitoring results. The results of your monitoring are as follows. Lead, 0, meaning we have none in the city. So when people weigh in on Facebook, residents, we have to have a united front here and tell people we're fine here. Do not be nervous. If they have a question, please have them call the water department. Please have them call us. All of my people are versed in it. I am. Judy is our secretary. Folks, we are totally fine. Put faith in your leaders. I guarantee you we have not an issue in the city, nor do we ever have to worry about it. Please.
Okay, I only have one more thing. I'd like to know how we address the breach of confidentiality regarding the privilege letter related to the board review. Do we have any?
I would have to look into it.
Okay. That's all I had. Thank you.
Bob, thanks. I want to reiterate, I can't say the word, it's too late. I had a 4-hour tour review, met the DPW guys, got a total understanding of how the water, I'm not a water expert at all, got a little technical aptitude, but I got a great understanding of how serious business our water is in this town and how, in my mind, is pretty safe. This guy here, untiring.
Well, we all are.
No, but listen.
Everybody.
Listen.
Although I think I'm special.
Personally, for me, we make a joke. We make jokes enlighteningly if you come in and spending our money, but in reality, this guy really works extremely hard to make sure we have good water and sewage in this community. And what's going on around the country, as Glenn says, especially in Flint right now, everybody's panicking. So
We don't need to
the
here.
comments that he made tonight and how he says to address this, I think is the right way. If people have questions, call
Please
the water.
call us.
Let them do the due diligence. Maybe the
Yes.
water's not happy for you, who knows, but you can see the lead and the type of, I saw the commitment there myself, watching what was being done, and I don't think any of us have a clue, really, unless you've been through the tour yourself. So my comment is, everybody on the city council, whether you've done it or not, do it again. And let him show you around and get to know the guys and see what they're doing, and you'll have a great understanding of what's going on. You don't have to be an expert in water to see the care that's being taken to protect our water system in this city. So with that, I don't have anything else. If anybody else doesn't.
Move to adjourn.
It's time
Move
to
to
go.
adjourn.
We're adjourned. 11:40.
Miserable.